signs of improvement. There's improved dialogue between the Nepal government and the Chinese government in terms of ways that they can cooperate and communicate more effectively so that we don't keep repeating this pattern of glacial lake outburst floods or catastrophic events with origins in one country, and yet it's the other country that suffers.
The source of global warming being distanced from the impact it causes is a pattern we've seen the world over. And this emphasises the importance of global cooperation. So now we return to our question. Are the Himalayan glaciers at a tipping point? Himalayan glaciers are melting twice as fast now as last century, putting the water security of a fifth of the world's population at risk. This is increasing the threat of disasters, from avalanches and flooding to droughts. Experts warn that large parts of Himalayan glacier ice could disappear by the end of the century as global temperatures continue to rise. You've been listening to The Inquiry from the BBC World Service. Before we finish, I just wanted to let you know there is a huge archive of previous episodes available to listen to, including What's the Future of the European Union and Should We Mine the Moon? Just search for The Inquiry wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, why not click subscribe and turn on push notifications so you never miss a thing. This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, Tanya Beckett. The producer was Matt Tolson, the researcher, Evie Yabsley, the editor, Tom Bigwood, and the technical producer, Mitch Goodall.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live downtown on CBC with the show. We're on until 8:37, and thanks for joining us in the morning show here. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, also on the app and on YouTube. Well, the heat is on its way. In fact, we have a heat warning for areas around the Pembina Valley and more. In Winnipeg today, we'll get to a high of 29 degrees. We're already sitting at 15 at 3 minutes to 6 a.m. Thanks so much for joining us on the Wednesday morning show. Almost said Thursday there. We're not there yet. Let's say good morning to the team. Sierra Sanders is in directing. Hi, Sierra. Sierra's also going to be on the air covering your commute. Mr. Abby Adiemi is the keeper of the heat these days. Abby covers weather, and he's going to be, of course, behind the controls, being our lead tech on the show this morning, as always. And then there's Mr. Darren Mirage, who's bringing us the visuals. If you're watching our show live on YouTube, you'll see that there as we continue in live stream. Okay, let's go to Heather Wells with a busy Manitoba news run today. What's going on now, Heather?
Good morning. Well, MLAs have been in the chamber all night long. They're debating the NDP government's budget implementation bill. Around 4 yesterday afternoon, the PCs asked the NDP to ignore the clock. The NDP agreed, and since then, the Tories have been speaking against the bill while the NDP has stayed in the chamber to ensure Tory amendments do not pass. Going on 14 hours now, and they are sounding tired. We'll bring you some of their comments coming up. As well, Premier Wab Kinew and his Alberta counterpart are getting into a bit of a spat over separation. At the Western Premier's meeting yesterday, Kinew arguing Alberta's referendum on separatism should be delayed at least a year. He also argues Alberta's Danielle Smith is wrong to say the duty to consult with Indigenous people requires a second look. Those stories and more coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, those specific heat warnings are in effect for southern Manitoba, including Morden, Brandon, and as I mentioned, the Pembina Valley and Westman regions. The temperatures are going to be, crazy. Winnipeg, a high of 29 degrees. Brandon, a high of 32. With Humidex 33. This feels like August. And in Thompson, mainly sunny and a high of 21 today. So it's going to be very hot, and that's going to stay with us for the next couple of days. This is sweeping across a lot of the prairies. This hour in the program, first hour of the program, we're going to talk about teaching kids the difference between bad words and hateful language. Also, we're going to give you a preview of Doors Open Winnipeg, which is coming up this weekend. First, though, World Report.
On cue.
Your baby's gonna look just like you, but thankfully not too much, okay? She's toured all over the U.S. and Canada, opened for the likes of Ronnie Chang and Rick Mercer. She's written for hit TV shows, and she gave up a well-paying job in the corporate world to be an artist. Who is it? Find out on Q.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10, 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. The Carney government is expected to announce a major energy deal today. The agreement could see up to 1 million metric tons of liquefied natural gas exported annually to Germany. It would come from a planned facility off the northwest coast of BC. But as Georgie Smythe reports, the project still faces hurdles.
We look forward to celebrating the formal announcement of this with the NISCA.
BC Premier David Eby is upbeat on news of an agreement for a German company to buy tons of liquid natural gas from Silicim's LNG, a proposed floating export facility about 80 kilometres north of Prince Rupert. It's being developed in partnership with Nisga'a Nation alongside Canadian and US gas producers. Eby was keen to tout the news at a Western Premiers Conference alongside Alberta leader Danielle Smith, who's still trying to secure private investment for her proposed oil pipeline.
It really reflects what is possible when we work together. And I am so glad to see the federal government joining us to take the foundation that has been built in British Columbia.
Eby told Media BC has issued the permit Silicim's LNG needs, but other regulatory and court challenges lay ahead. It still needs final investment approval from its backers. Nonetheless, BC's Energy Minister Adrian Dix says the deal with Germany shows there's energy opportunities for Canada in Europe too.
Our big advantage in Western Canada is our access to Asian markets, and that's, I think, obvious to everybody. But this would be good news. Having more diversity in the market is better than less diversity.
Silicim says construction could begin as early as this year if its project schedule goes to plan. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Former Liberal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is expected to announce today he is resigning as a Member of Parliament. Guilbeault has been critical of changes Prime Minister Mark Carney has made to climate policy. Last year, he quit cabinet after Ottawa's energy deal with Alberta was made public. Guilbeault is not the only MP feeling uneasy. More than a dozen Liberals recently wrote to Carney, raising concerns about the compromises being made to get more things built in Canada. Greece's former Prime Minister is attempting a political comeback. Supporters of Alexis Tsipras chant at a political rally in Athens. Tsipras led Greece during its debt crisis more than a decade ago when the country was almost kicked out of the Eurozone. Now he's launching a new political party, the Greek Left Alliance. It's pledging to restore the rule of law and independence of institutions. Political observers say Tsipras is hoping to tap into widespread mistrust of the government over corruption scandals. The next election in Greece is next year. Israel says it has killed the newest military chief of Hamas with an airstrike on Gaza City. Gaza health officials say that attack killed a total of 6 people. Israel's military is also intensifying attacks in Lebanon. The CBC's Willie Lowry has more from Jerusalem.
Crowds gather in the Al Rimal neighborhood west of Gaza City, surveying the damage of yet another Israeli airstrike. This one, Israel's military says, targeted Hamas's new military chief, Mohammed Odeh. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, said Odeh was killed in the strike and thanked the IDF for the brilliant execution. Katz said Odeh was responsible for intelligence during the October 7th attacks. Last night's strike comes just 11 days after Israel killed Hamas's previous military leader. The country appears to be increasing its military efforts in both Gaza and Lebanon, despite U.S. brokered ceasefires in both places. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the Israeli military to increase its efforts in Lebanon, where Hezbollah militants continue to attack Israeli soldiers and communities in the north. Netanyahu says under my directive and that of the defense minister, together with the IDF chief of the general staff, we are intensifying our operation in Lebanon. Lebanon's health ministry says 31 people were killed on Tuesday in Israeli strikes and at least 40 others injured. Yara Hamadeh is with Save the Children in Beirut.
We are witnessing intensified airstrikes on civilians.
The two countries are expected to enter a fourth round of U.S.-mediated negotiations next week in Washington. Willie Lowry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Iran is beginning to lift its nationwide internet blackout. Authorities restricted internet access back in January, calling it a wartime necessity. The shutdown has cost Iran's economy an estimated $30 million per day. But now, after 88 days, state authorities say broadband services are back. Mobile internet services are still partially restricted. It's not clear when that will also be restored. The head of the World Health Organization is in Democratic Republic of Congo to assess the Ebola outbreak. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says the crisis is outpacing international efforts to contain it. So far, there are more than 220 suspected Ebola deaths and more than 1,000 presumed cases. As Jennifer Lagrassa reports, as the outbreak grows, Canada is enforcing new travel and immigration restrictions.
We're taking the necessary measures to protect Canadians.
Canada's Minister of Immigration and Refugees, Lena Metlej-Diab, announced a 90-day pause on processing visas and other immigration documents from citizens of Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, and South Sudan. That's because of a large-scale Ebola outbreak in those regions, which has reached 1,000 suspected cases and hundreds of deaths, many of them in Congo.
I think we are very low risk in Canada.
Federal Health Minister Marjorie Michel says these new measures were driven by the upcoming FIFA World Cup games, which are headed to Canada next month.
We are in summertime, and during FIFA, I think the risk will be higher.
The government is also ramping up screening for the next 3 months. Starting this weekend, Canadians or foreign nationals who have been to the impacted regions in the past 21 days must have a health assessment. Anyone with symptoms could be transferred to hospital or required to self-isolate.
I think it's absolutely a reasonable approach.
Dr. Isaac Bogosh is an infectious disease specialist in Toronto. He thinks these measures are helpful.
It's going to reduce the already low risk.
But he says Canada also needs to increase efforts on the ground to get the outbreak in Central Africa, driven by a rare strain of the Ebola virus, under control, a disease that currently has no approved treatment or vaccine. Jennifer Lagrassa, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
Rescuers in central Laos say they have found 5 villagers stuck in a flooded cave alive. They've been trapped there for a week, ever since they went to search for gold and flash floods blocked their exit. Video posted by a Thai rescue group appears to show the villagers in the cave, each wearing a headlamp and sitting on a rock surrounded by floodwater. 2 people are still missing. Getting around on an electric moped or motorcycle in Ontario could soon become more complicated. The province is looking to reclassify them as motor vehicles. Currently, they're e-bikes under provincial law. But as Giacomo Panico reports, owners could soon need a license and insurance.
Well, you got your high beams, your low beams, turn signals, horn.
Peter Boucher proudly shows off his shiny new electric moped. It follows the existing rules on e-bikes in Ontario, meaning he doesn't need a license, registration, or insurance. Important factors, says Boucher, since he lives on a fixed income.
But if they regulate it, I can't afford that, and that's the end of me for, driving my scooter.
The CEO of the Insurance Brokers Association of Ontario points out that heavy e-bikes that are more akin to mopeds and motorcycles should be treated differently than bicycles. Colin Simpson says without insurance, governments are often on the hook to cover accident expenses.
Because no one individual is likely to be able to afford to pay for the claims that they create and the damage they create through a single vehicle accident. But if you're part of the risk, you need to be part of the solution.
If adopted, the changes mean Ontario would be the first province to require insurance for slow-speed electric mopeds. The Canadian Electric Bicycle Association, which represents e-bike retailers, says the government is overreacting to concerns about riders who operate e-bikes illegally on roads and sidewalks. Ontario's Ministry of Transportation says enforcement would only start after a 12-month education campaign, but they wouldn't provide a launch date. Nonetheless, it seems Peter Boucher's time with his cherished moped is running out.
I love this thing. I'm going to hate to have to give it up. I really would.
Giacomo Panico, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to your Wednesday morning show on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. Information radio. That's all the spots you're finding us. And thanks for finding us this morning. It's going to be a really hot one. We actually have some heat warnings in effect. We'll hear about those in a moment. In Winnipeg and across southern Manitoba. This hour on the show, we're going to talk about teaching kids the difference between bad words and hateful language. So stay tuned. That's coming up in a parenting column. Also, Doors Open Winnipeg's annual Open House Festival of Heritage Buildings is back this weekend. We will tee up live what is the very latest and where you can head out. It looks like the weather is going to hold up. And then a little bit later in the hour, big tech companies are pushing back over Canada's Bill C-22. They appeared yesterday before MPs. We're going to follow up more on those developments and what was said. So stay tuned. It's all ahead on Information Radio. We begin with headlines and other stories with Heather Wells.
Well, it looks like that long debate has just wrapped up at the Manitoba legislature. MLAs were in the ledge all night long, starting at 4 in the afternoon, debating the budget affordability bill and the other bills that were included in that measure. So we're going to hear what happened, what was said, and how long it dragged out. That's coming up as well. The Manitoba Islamic Association says the rising cost of lamb may change how some Muslims celebrate Eid al-Adha today. On the Festival of Sacrifice, it's a traditional thing to have a lamb slaughtered and shared with family, friends, and those in need. But the price of lamb has skyrocketed just as the price of other foods has. So we'll hear the impact coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather. Thank you. Well, speaking of skyrocketing, let's look at the temperatures. Here's Abby.
Yes, Marcy, we're starting clear and it's going to warm up and it's going to really heat up across the southern regions today, though we're tracking dense fog also in the northern part. Hence, we have heat warnings in the Westman area and the Pembina Valley region. This is impacting the Morden, Winkler, Altoona, Morris area all the way towards Brandon this morning, where we're going to be seeing daytime highs in the 20s and even into the 30s. We're talking about Morden hitting 29 degrees today and Brandon reaching 28. That is not including how it's going to feel with the heat included in there, so take it easy, hence this heat warning. Meanwhile, way up north, Churchill area, we have a fog advisory, near zero visibility as dense fog rolls in from the Hudson Bay. Though things should clear up later as we get deep into the morning, but you will be dealing with that. For the city, we are at 15 both at the airport and at the Forks. It's going to rise quickly. We're going to get to 27, 28 today in the city. But right now, it is 15 degrees in Winnipeg.
All right, and traffic's looking good so far. Call Sierra if something develops on our commuter line, 788-3093. Well, up first on our parenting column, for kids, saying a word they know they're not supposed to use can be irresistible, but cursing when you stub your toe is, of course, very different from hateful language. There are ways that parents can make it clear what is appropriate and what is not. And of course, every family is going to set that. Joining me now to discuss this topic is Esper Bergman, a father of 3 and author of Special Topics and Being a Parent, a queer and tender guide to things I've learned about parenting, mostly the hard way. Hi there, Bear.
Good morning.
So it's interesting because, I mean, sometimes you do stub your toe and then maybe, a swear that might commonly be used flies out of your mouth. Tell me a little bit more about how you explain the difference between swearing and hateful language or a slur to kids, especially when they're little.
Yeah, I think that it's a critical distinction to make. When I was a kid, it was all bad words. And I think we really need to talk to kids about what kind of bad words. Talking to a kid, I would describe a swear as language that isn't respectful. And we don't use them in situations where we want to speak and act respectfully, right? Not at school, not at a religious service, not in front of your grandmother, please. When we're talking about a slur, we're talking about a word that is mean on purpose, that is specifically made to demean someone, to make them feel bad about who they are as a person, right? Not what they did, but their identity. And we know that slurs are disrespectful because for every slur that exists, there is a respectful or positive word you could use to describe that same identity or group of people.
What is your advice about how you think parents should react if you hear your kids saying something inappropriate? And at what age would you start having these conversations?
I mean, I would start having them as soon as they start picking up words, right? And I think, again, we treat it differently for swears and slurs. When it comes to swears, I think you can just sort of say, oh, no, that's an adult word. Just like we have adult beverages, we have adult words. See me when you're 13 or 16 or however old you feel is appropriate, and we'll talk about it again. But until then, those words are not for you. When it comes to slurs, I think parents have to pull out the big no. And parents listening, you kind of know there are some ways that you say no to your kids that are sort of procedural, right? Like, do not leave your shoes in the hallway. And we say that today, and then they say, oh, sorry. But then the day after tomorrow, they're going to do it again. We're going to tell them again, right? You expect that you're going to have to keep reinforcing household rules or policies. But the big no is a values-related no. And that's when you say, absolutely not. I do not want to hear you use that word ever again. We do not use words that are mean on purpose in this house.
What's your advice to parents of that live in families that are going to be could be targeted, like talking to their children about hearing this language is a very different conversation, obviously, when we're talking about hateful language and slurs.
Oh, absolutely. I think the most important thing I would want to reinforce for a kid is that when someone uses a slur, it only means something about them. It doesn't mean anything about you, right? A person who uses a slur on purpose is a person who wants to be mean on purpose. And that certainly says something about their character, but doesn't say anything about the person that they use a slur toward. And I think that we can equip kids, even as young as kindergarten children, whether they are targeted by that slur or not, when they hear a slur to say, that's not nice. And when they're older, that's racist, that's sexist, that's homophobic. And for sure, not all kids have that level of confidence, but I will tell you, if they hear you speak back against slurs when, somebody says something out of pocket at the grocery store, then they will also begin to develop the confidence to do the same thing. And I think that's so important because a slur also affects everyone who hears it. And sometimes even the most simple, that's very unkind, or I don't like that word, really helps other people to understand that slurs aren't appropriate. They're not acceptable language.
Thanks for this morning, Bear. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That is Bear Bergman, father of 3 and author of Special Topics in Being a Parent, our parenting columnist here on CBC. We reached him this morning in Regina.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
It looks like this is maybe a one-day blip when farmers across the province need hot and dry.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take.
In general, it's harder to find a job even if you're educated.
I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. From 12:15 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
When I was 5 or 6, my parents gave me seeds and helped me plant them. That was probably close to 70 years ago. And here I am still gardening.
It just brings everyone together. Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you weekdays on CBC.
Well, MLAs have been in the chamber all night. We'll hear more about that on the news. They've just wrapped up, and Heather's going to explain why. So that's all coming up at 6:30. We've been watching that story for you here at CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you for joining us on 89.3 FM. It is hot, sunny, and beautiful in the weather today, but maybe a little too hot. There is a yellow heat warning that's been in effect and issued for southern Manitoba. This is Brandon, Morden. Temperatures are going to be in the mid-30s all week. Winnipeg right now is at 15 degrees already. Today we're going to get to 29, and we will probably crack 30 in the next couple of days for sure. Tomorrow, Friday's high is 35 degrees. They're saying tomorrow 34, so it's going to be really, really hot. Lots of water needed. Well, you ever been to jail? This weekend's your chance. Sort of. Doors Open runs this weekend. During the free annual event, people can visit some of the city's oldest and most storied buildings, and the Vaughan Street Jail is always super popular, right? Hosted by Heritage Winnipeg, the volunteer-run festival has walking tours, once-a-year access to historic sites and buildings, and maybe you've been before because it's been going on for 23 years. This is the 23rd year. Incredible. And there's new stops as well, so we're going to hear about those. Cindy Tugwell is Executive Director for Heritage Winnipeg, and after a special night in the city, is up early and in studio. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, good morning. Happy to be here.
So before we get to Doors Open, last night was special. Tell me a little bit about who was being honored at Government House.
It was really special. So 4 amazing Manitobans were awarded the Lieutenant Governor's Historic Preservation Award through the Manitoba Historical Society. And what really struck me is the decades of dedication and volunteering they were winning for. It was amazing.
We have to feature some of those folks, I think, later today on CBC.
Really proud to be a Manitoban when you sit there and they come up and you hear some of their accolades.
Yeah. And like you said, it becomes part of the fabric of their lives, how much they care about these spaces.
Yeah, absolutely.
We get to see some spaces in Winnipeg that are cool. So what's new this year with Doors Open?
Oh, we have lots of new stuff. We have 20 new events this year. So we're always saying after 23 years, we want to spice it up, bring other events and venues. The Marshall McLuhan House is brand new, and he was a famous philosopher and professor. He was raised in Winnipeg. He went on to be the Canadian founder of media studies, which is amazing because he predicted the internet 30 years before it happened. Prior to Doors Open, I really didn't know who he was. So you get to visit his house, his childhood home, but also learn important history. So our built heritage really is telling the stories our buildings tell and understanding that continuity of how important this city is and can continue and is.
He's the medium is the message guy, Marshall McLuhan. And when you think about when he said that, like you said, it's like quite incredible, right?
It's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
20 new spots on the list. I want to ask you something about first timers if they've never been to Doors Open, because people think about our other festivals, right? Like Fringe, you plan, maybe you can go to a whole bunch of them. Do you have people that hit like all the spots? Do you know if you have people that come every year and really try to cram it all in?
I think what makes our event unique is it's citywide. So there's lots of things in the downtown, the Exchange, Transcona, St. Vital, St. James. So no, nobody has ever taken them all in. We have 85 buildings and walking tours this year. So what makes it nice is every year it's a different experience, even if you go to the same place. But what I really want people to take in is maybe some buildings, but also some walking tours. We have the Ghosted Sign tours again, one of the best in Canada. The West End Mural tours again. These are tours and showcasing properties that are well known and across Canada. So this is time for Winnipeggers to have some pride, look around and see how our built heritage really contributes to our city every day.
And for ghosted tours, I know I'm skipping ahead a bit because I know a lot about this, but if you haven't been before, like ghosted tours is those signs that are on buildings, but they're fading away, right?
Yeah, in the Exchange District. So again, showcasing a National Historic Site, 20, over 20 city blocks and over 110 buildings in the Exchange. We really have a lot to showcase, and this year is local artists performing at the Cube at Old Market Square. And again, this is a really great marriage of heritage arts and culture, this event. And so we have performers, Manitoba Chamber Orchestra at the Millennium Center, River City Syncopators in front of the Vaughan Street Jail, so you can have a little dance while you're standing in line. I think it's really trying to bring all sectors together and to showcase the best of Winnipeg and Manitoba.
I said the Vaughan Street Jail was popular, but does it continue to be one of the most popular sites just because it's just so interesting and been in movies and all that?
Yeah, and also you have to remember this is only the one day a year that it's ever open. So no one can get it, not filmmakers, not ghost tours. So and really our judicial system and prison system and even our social system of how we treated people and the journey we've been on over the last 150 years, those stories are told at the jail. So I think it's really important history.
When you think about the other events that are part of the weekend experience, there's some things for families, right? That at every location, families are looking for, is it the Golden Boy?
They're looking for the Golden Boy during the scavenger hunt. We have an amazing prize donated by Kite and Caboodle, wonderful toys. And I think, some of the events that we have are indicative of kids loving the Winnipeg Fire Hall, Fire Museum. The Winnipeg Police Museum. We have Seven Oaks, the oldest house. We have Ross House. We have the Ukrainian Labor Temple, which is now one of the most important in the world labor temples. So, we're not a small player. We've got the landmark buildings like the legislature and the law courts, but we also have small innocuous like Park Alley in South Osborne. St. Boniface, very important, the former City Hall. So temporarily the St. Boniface Museum is closed. So they have an exhibit during doors open. So that's unique and learning, they call it Unlock St. Boniface. And then conversely, you head over to Transcona and you can see the CN 2747, which just turned 100 a few weeks ago, and the important contribution that rail and was part of transportation really across Canada and put us on the map.
Yeah, and built the early identity, at least, of Transcona back in the day, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my uncle worked the rail line, and a lot of young days for me when I was little, walking through Transcona streets and hearing about the rail lines through the community.
Well, and also the military history. We have armories, so we have churches to talk about the importance of how they've had to pivot and start utilizing their spaces different as congregations shrink. So really important city issues.
It's pretty cool that people can take this in. As you said, you're not going to get to all 85. Probably it's a lot. But that if you do it geographically, that's one way. But the other thing would be by theme, I guess, if you want to do, churches or you could probably look at the list there. Where will people find the list, and what do you suggest that they plan, especially if they want to get to some of those busier venues and they, want to try to get in?
Typically we say from about 9 to 5 are those hours. I really feel like everything is listed on the website. That's really important. Doors open, Winnipeg CA. And we've tried to time the tours now so that you get the experience and you know ahead of time what time to show up. Often people will show up and there's nothing really. These are really great volunteers, over 500 volunteers at all the venues, and they really dedicate themselves to plan to give them a great experience. And we've got things all over the city. So again, there's something for every age demographic, and it's free, which is wonderful because you can explore and embrace and get excited about your city and not have to spend any money, which I think is wonderful in times like this.
It's amazing, actually. It's incredible that that you guys can still offer that. Just before you go, how would you like to see this grow in the future?
I would love to see this go all across the province. Our dream, actually, now that we've realized 23 years, wow, we were nervous after the first year if it would be successful. It continues to grow. Our pre-registered events have sold out in literally 5-10 minutes. So we'd like to see all the towns and cities across Manitoba participate, and we could call it Explore Your province over the summer, and every town or city could have festivals a weekend they choose. And I think it's really important now with people traveling locally and the cost of traveling that we really enhance what we have here in the province and enhance that experience.
Yeah, there's an opportunity there.
There's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in early and also giving us programming for the rest of the day as we find those folks that last night were honored for their heritage work. So
it was my pleasure, and thank you, and I hope everybody enjoys our weekend.
That is Cindy Tugwell live in studio with us, Executive Director of Heritage Winnipeg. Doors open Saturday and Sunday this weekend. I can't believe we're at the end of May, but here we are, May 30th and 31st. So if you want information on anything, they really do have a comprehensive website. Doors Open Winnipeg, that's all the words, doorsopenwinnipeg.ca. And you're spelling out Winnipeg, by the way. We're coming up to news time at 6:30, and then we're going to dip into what's happening in the world of business news with Christely Ramlakan. She'll be talking about trade and what we are hearing about the future of tariffs from the United States. Also, a landmark deal, LNG deal, between Canada and Germany, you might have heard about on World Report, is expected to be announced with more detail today, but she has already some early details, Christely. So we're going to hear from her coming up in our business news. If you need us on the commuter line, it should be, frankly, a beautiful morning if you're driving, walking, or rolling. Make sure you bring water, though, because it's going to be a hot one. And 788-3093 if you do run into any problems out there that are causing issues on the commute. We'll pass them along on CBC. Your news from Manitoba is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 15 degrees right now. Another hot one on the way. Mostly sunny today with a high of 29. Parts of the Pembina Valley in western Manitoba, including Brandon, are under a heat warning today. Premier Wab Kinew and his Alberta counterpart are getting into a spat over separation. At the Western Premiers meeting yesterday in Kananaskis, Kinew argued Alberta's referendum on separatism should be delayed by at least a year. He says all this talk is a distraction from work happening across Canada to build mega projects.
Now is the time to work together. Why don't we hold off on this referendum talk for a year or two and see if we get these pipelines under construction? Because at the end of the day, we want Canada to succeed.
Kinew also argues Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is wrong to say the duty to consult with Indigenous people requires a second look. Her comments came after a judge quashed the referendum petition because the government failed to properly consult. We'll hear more on this coming up in Information Radio. Well, tired applause in the Manitoba legislature. A little less than enthusiastic. MLAs have been in the chamber. They've been up all night debating the NDP government's budget implementation bill. Around 4 yesterday afternoon, the opposition PCs asked the NDP to ignore the clock. The NDP agreed. Since then, the Tories have been speaking against the bill, while the NDP has stayed in the chamber to ensure Tory amendments don't pass. Just before 5 this morning, Brandon West MLA Wayne Balkin says it's about cooperation.
We can be friends, we can work together, and that's what we've been calling. We've been calling on this government to work together, to work in harmony with us, to try and bring affordability back to this province.
The PCs say the NDP's budget falls short, that a PST cut off junk food and ready-made meals isn't enough. The Tories want a major income tax cut instead. And the debating continues this hour. A halal grocery store owner in Winnipeg says the rising cost of lamb has made it harder for some Muslims to buy the animal or meat ahead of Eid al-Adha today. The Muslim holiday is known as the Festival of Sacrifice. On this day, it is traditional for a lamb to be slaughtered and its meat shared with family, friends, and those in need. Khaldoun Majani owns Al Sham Food Market in Winnipeg. He says in his more than a decade running the store, the cost of lamb has nearly doubled.
People, they're asking, but at the same time, they feel like it's out of budget. So that's make it like a little bit hard for some people, yeah.
Federal data suggests between 2024 and 2025, the price of live lambs jumped as much as 30%. Manitoba wants to make it harder for people under 18 to get flavored vape products. A new bill before the legislature will ban the sales in stores where youth can enter. But one organization says that's not enough. Juliette Muka at the Manitoba Lung Association says youth are already banned from buying vape products, but they're still getting them in high numbers, either from people they know or online.
We also know from a Health Canada report just from last spring that it shows vape shops are actually non-compliance rates are at over 43%. So we need to tighten that, obviously, more legislation.
If the bill passes, flavored vapes would only be sold in age-restricted specialty stores. The measure would only apply to urban areas. Some provinces like BC and Ontario already limit the sales of flavored vapes, while other provinces have banned the sale of flavored products for adults as well. You can hear more on this story as well. You can see more on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Former Liberal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is expected to announce today he's resigning as an MP. Guilbeault has been critical of changes Prime Minister Mark Carney has made to climate policy. Last year, he quit cabinet after Ottawa's energy deal with Alberta was made public. Guilbeault, not the only MP feeling uneasy. More than a dozen Liberals recently wrote Carney, raising concerns about compromises being made to get more things built in Canada. Israel says it has killed the newest military chief of Hamas with an airstrike on Gaza City. Gaza health officials say the attack killed a total of 6 people. Israel's military is also intensifying attacks in Lebanon. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. And a new state-of-the-art lab may help Manitobans breathe easier during future wildfire seasons. The Air Safe Lab is about to open later this year at the University of Manitoba. Professor Andrew Haleko is one of the project's co-leads. He says this lab will simulate complicated real-world conditions from different types of fire and evaluate the effects of approximately 30 different constituents of air pollution.
We're doing research that has real-world significance and can be translated into meaningful information to the everyday person. You know, anyone who wants to go outside and breathe should be interested.
Haleko says one feature of the AirSafe Lab is its ability to monitor the effects of ambient air, and he hopes that will help develop a more sophisticated air quality index than is currently available. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Heather Wells live in our news center. We'll have more on that story, by the way, about the AirSafe Lab coming up after 7 o'clock right here on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are listening to The Morning Show. Abby Adeyemi is here to talk about the heat.
Yes, Marcy, southern Manitoba already tracking those intense heat, hence the heat warning in place for areas around Morden, areas around Brandon, as we're seeing temperatures climbing into the mid-30s today, while Churchill battles that fog advisory that's causing near zero visibility. So expect conditions in the south and the north to be like here and there today. For the Red River Valley region, Winnipeg already, we're seeing sunny conditions outside. Temperatures hovering around 15-16 degrees depending on where you are. Morning temperatures really going to stay. It's just going to be on the climb, as some east winds would also be pushing that. We're looking at a daytime high of 29 degrees by the afternoon period on the more sunny conditions and clear skies, and then we'll see these conditions stay even into the evening before we get some relief, like 16 degrees, 17 degrees overnight. However, that would set us up for tomorrow, where we're going to get into the proper 30s. Across other regions in the south, the Pembina Valley region, Morden, Winkler, Altoona, all the way down to Portage La Prairie, we're seeing already temperatures around 12 degrees. It's sunny, but it's going to get hot as things warm up into 32, 33 for some areas in the southern regions. For the Westman region, Brandon towards Nipawin, we're tracking 14 degrees there at this time. Clear skies, some sunny conditions, also getting some winds in the mix. You will warm up to 32 today. Now along the Parkland region, Dauphin tracking it towards the Roblin area. We're seeing 9 degrees there. Some sunshine already making its way into the region, warming things up to 28 8 later in the day. Good morning to the folks in the Interlake region. We're seeing 11 degrees in the Gimli area, mainly sunny there. You get to 27. Then we cross into the central part of the province, tracking all the way up north. The powerful influence, mainly sunny there. 10 degrees, 11 degrees, depending on where you are, with some breezy conditions, warming to 22. Norway House is at 7, heading to 22 also. Thompson, you're seeing 6 degrees there, some sunshine, high of 21, while Lynn Lake is seeing sunny conditions at 7 on the way to 22 as well. Gillam is at 0 for now. With sunshine, you will see 19 as your daytime high, while Tudela Lake is at 1 and sunny, heading to 19. Churchill -1 at this time with some freezing fog, high 14 later. So the south, contrasting the north, you're seeing fog in the north, and you're seeing most regions in the south heading close to the 30s today. But for the Westman and the
heat warning,
Pembina Valley region, we should see those heat really play in place today.
Totally. All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Bring out the sandals for sure. Don't forget the water. Let's get into the commute with Sierra Sanders.
It's been pretty quiet this morning, Marcy. No calls on the commuter line, and I'm not hearing about any other bigger situations going on out there. But if that's not the case and something changes out there on your commute, whether you are driving or you're walking, you're biking, however you are getting around today and wherever you are this morning, give me a call. That number is 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you. By the way, we heard an exchange between Premier Wab Kinew and Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith in the news. We'll hear more of that coming out of the Kananaskis Western Premiers meeting coming up in a few minutes from now. Between now and then, though, let's get caught up on business news with Crystalie Ramlakan, who's here with our report. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
Look at us. We kind of matched today, but we're opposite. I've got black and white stripes going vertically. You've got the horizontal rolling.
Yeah.
Could be in a catalog together.
Yes.
Let's talk trade. What are we hearing about the future of tariffs now from the States?
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump's trade czar says there will be tariffs in place on Canada and Mexico, even though the countries are part of a continental trade pact. So U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer says most nations have accepted tariffs are part of the Trump administration's policies, but that Canada's approach has been different. And Greer says Canada is in a different spot when it comes to accepting Trump's tariffs, and it's hard to see where that ends. So the Trump administration has begun CUSMA negotiations with Mexico, but they haven't started with Canada yet. And this review sets up a three-way choice for each country to make by July. So they can renew the deal for another 16 years, withdraw from it, or signal both non-renewal and non-withdrawal, which would trigger an annual review that could keep negotiations going for up to a decade. And Greer has previously suggested the Trump administration is unlikely to rubber stamp a renewal. So he is required to inform U.S. Congress about the decision next week. So we might get some more details soon about how this is going. And the trade pact has largely shielded Canada and Mexico from the worst of Trump's tariffs. The current 10% global tariffs do not apply to goods compliant under CUSMA. But as we know, Canada is still being slammed by sectoral tariffs on goods like steel, aluminum, cabinetry, and automobiles.
To another story here, a landmark LNG deal between Canada and Germany, as you've been hearing also out of the Western Premiers Conference, is expected to be formally announced today. What do we know about it already?
Well, sources say it's an agreement to export liquefied natural gas from northwestern BC to Germany. So the large-scale deal, a first between Canada and Europe, is between Silicim's LNG in BC and a German company, Cefa. So the LNG facility was named a priority by the BC government and is among the major projects that Prime Minister Mark Carney said would be reviewed for fast-track permitting and approval. And so in the face of global energy instability and the push to sell Canadian resources overseas, the proposed $10 billion floating facility would become the country's second largest LNG terminal. And on top of that, there would be a commitment to building a large transmission line to supply electricity and a natural gas pipeline across BC. So government officials are describing it as the second largest private sector investment in Canada's history. And here's more from BC Premier David Eby.
British Columbia has thrown the ball up and it's given the federal government a chance to take that alley-oop and dunk it. And this announcement that the federal government will be sharing more about is about how we can work together to deepen those trading relationships around the world, in this case with Germany. And it really reflects what is possible when we work together.
Now, the goal of the project is to have it up and running by 2030, but some who live along the proposed pipeline are concerned about environmental impacts. And some have already vowed to protest and oppose any construction and to take the fight to the courts to try and block the project.
And finally, on your business news this morning, Spotify is adding a new feature.
Yes, that's right. So Spotify says it is rolling out narrated articles from top publications, including Rolling Stone, The Atlantic, Vogue, Variety, and Vanity Fair. The streaming giant will offer more than 650 long-form magazine articles to users with access to audiobooks. And Spotify is bringing in more content to try to boost user engagement and to better compete with things like AI music startups and larger podcast rivals such as YouTube and Netflix. So Spotify says the company has already captured roughly 20% of the audiobooks market in the US, at least. And premium subscribers can access the articles as part of their monthly audiobooks allowance, while free users have the option to purchase individual articles for about $1.99. And last week, Spotify announced a deal with Universal Music Group to let subscribers create AI-generated covers and remixes of tracks by some of the label's artists. And Spotify's also unveiled Reserved through a partnership with Live Nation Entertainment, which lets eligible premium subscribers buy up to 2 tickets to concerts before they go on sale to the general public. I don't know, Mark, are you a fan of
Not really.
audiobooks?
Not really, no. I usually am a fan of silence because I talk so much, but how about you?
Yeah, I like to put on a podcast to, clean the house or, do chores or something like that to kind of like zone out, I guess, distract my brain into doing work. But when I have listened to audiobooks, sometimes like the pacing is off for me. Like I feel it's like too slow or it's too fast. And I like to make up the voices in my head. When you see like a movie, sometimes you're like, hey, that's not how I picture the character.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for this morning, Crystal. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Marcy.
Crystal Ramlicam with our business news today at 6:45 a.m. Well, in her report, she was talking about, of course, the agreement between BC and Germany, the proposed pipeline, and also talking about the fact that some are already opposing this and opposing construction, going to the courts, talking about environmental impacts and consultation. Let's build on a story that is similar that you might have been hearing in the news this morning. There were a lot of tensions yesterday at the closing of the Western Premiers Conference in Kananaskis, Alberta. Manitoba's Premier Wab Kinew calling out Alberta Premier Danielle Smith about her interpretation of the province's duty to consult with Indigenous people. So this came as Alberta is looking to call an October referendum to separate from Canada. So it was an exchange on the separation conversation. Earlier this month, a judge squashed the referendum petition because the government failed to properly consult Indigenous groups. Here, though, is more of the conversation and exchange that is in the news this morning between Premier Kinew and Premier Smith.
No, the way we're going to seek clarity is through the court. We think that the duty to consult is meant to be looked at through a lens of major projects, and we take that very seriously. We had an Indigenous roundtable yesterday where I shared with the premiers how we're using our Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation to help underwrite major project participation, to give revenues to Indigenous nations, and how we want to continue engaging with Indigenous nations on that. But the issue, I think, in the court is whether that duty to consult should apply to citizen-initiated petitions. And that's where I think that the court erred in judgment, and I think it's also anti-democratic, the decision that they made. But we'll make the arguments in court about what the limits to duty to consult ought to be, and we'll see how that conversation goes. There's a couple of rounds that we have to go through, obviously, to Court of Appeal, probably also to the Supreme Court of Canada. But we want to make sure that we have a very clear understanding of what the duty to consult really means and what it doesn't mean. And I think at the moment there's a lack of clarity on that.
And you've talked a lot about...
Sorry, I'd like to respond. So I think we know that is not correct, a lot of what you just said there, Premier Smith. Specifically, and we spoke about this, so I don't mind repeating this. It is not up to the petition gatherers to fulfill the duty to consult. It is up to you as the Alberta government to fulfill the duty to consult. And in this case, when there's clearly going to be an impact on well-established existing hunting and fishing rights by putting up an international border, if some would have their way, the judge ruled, and I would agree with the judge's ruling, that that is going to infringe on rights. And so there is a duty to consult. Now, to take a step further, for the Albertan who's been frustrated over the lack of progress on pipelines, you've got the Premier of BC announcing LNG, we're working on Churchill, we're working on northern trade corridors. This is a moment to get big things built in Manitoba. And I would say now is the time to work together. Why don't we hold off on this referendum talk for a year or two and see if we get these pipelines under construction? Because at the end of the day, we want Canada to succeed. We're all very proud of this place. I myself am very, very patriotic. And what I think it's important for us to say when we hear this sorts of discussion happening here in Alberta is for us to say, okay, thank you First Nations in Alberta for hitting the pause button on this. Now the rest of Canada, let's work together and show Alberta just how appreciated they are in the rest of this country.
And this is why we have the courts, because you can have politicians disagree, and that's why you take it through the court, and you take it through the appeals, and you go to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, though, I respect the difference of opinion that Premier Canoe has raised. I think we'll wait to see how our Court of Appeals process goes and see what the courts have to say in the end.
So that was an exchange between Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith and Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew speaking at the Western Premiers Conference in Kananaskis, Alberta yesterday. It's making news across the country, that exchange, as all of the premiers continue to move forward to talk about consultation, pipelines, and the next steps in Canada. It is 10 to 7 right now on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're with Manitoba's Information Radio here on CBC. Thanks for being here. Got a hot one on the way right now to start the day. It's 15 in Winnipeg, partly cloudy, although mostly sunny downtown. It is sunny in Brandon and 13. Thompson's mainly sunny and 5 degrees, so pretty clear across the province. Well, let's talk about Canada's proposed Bill C-22. It's also sparking some debate. This is over privacy, cybersecurity, and police powers. The bill would give police faster access to some digital subscriber information during their investigations. Critics warn it could weaken encryption and expand government surveillance capabilities. There's also concern about what it might mean for investment in Canada's tech sector. David Gerhardt is here, head of the Department of Computer Science at the University of Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So just a brief reminder for listeners plugging in here what Bill C-22 is trying to do and a bit about the controversy, David.
Yeah, so C-22 is the most recent lawful access bill. The federal government has been trying for a while to implement lawful access, which would give police, CSIS, other law enforcement the ability to more quickly and more easily get access to data, online data of bad guys' activities. But the way it's implemented, or the way it's proposed in this case, is it requires service providers to collect and store an enormous amount of data for a long time. And there are provisions in it which makes some of the companies concerned that there may be a risk to encryption, which is a way that we might protect data. This has the potential to maybe make that problematic.
Some apps and VPN services are saying that they might leave Canada over this. How real is that risk and why?
Yeah, so Proton VPN, for example, has said that the bill in its current state, they are not able to comply with it. Their whole business model is around privacy. Their whole business model is around not keeping logs of the people who access their services. People have lots of legitimate reasons for using VPNs, and so Proton VPN has said that they will either have to leave Canada, or if they continue to operate in Canada, they may not be in compliance with this regulation as it's written.
And tell me more about what experts are weighing in on here. Do they think C-22 is the right approach to help police with their investigations?
It's better than previous attempts. Previous attempts have given or had the potential to give police significant access to data without a warrant. The warrantless access here is highly restricted. You can only ask a yes/no question about whether a person has used a particular system. But there are definitely still concerns with this bill. The definition of electronic service provider is overly broad. That's one of the problems. The amount of data that's collected is probably too much. The time frame that is required to retain this data is probably too long, and the access is probably too easy. The risks to potential backdoors for criminals to get access to this data collection is problematic.
Are there other ways that we might not be thinking about or have talked about yet this morning where the average Canadian or user might be affected by C22?
Yeah, because electronic service provider is just anybody who provides electronic service, that's basically everybody. So you can imagine a plumber who comes to fix some pipes and then installs an electronic water meter to detect leaks or something like that. That's an electronic service. So that potentially would be covered under this bill, and that plumber would have to collect data about anybody she does business with, and retain that data for a year under this bill. All lawyers are electronic lawyers. All doctors are electronic doctors these days. So almost everybody would have to collect and maintain this data and provide it to law enforcement if the appropriate requests are made.
Interesting. What impact do you think this could have on Canada in competition-wise when you think about AI, digital infrastructure, and cloud services?
Yeah, so Canada's reputation internationally is pretty good in the context of data. The way that this bill is proposed, as written, would make that maybe not as good. We have examples of in Canada, if we're seeking digital services overseas or even in the States, right? If a university or a public sector organization wants to buy services from Microsoft, they have to require that Microsoft have servers in Canada because they're worried about what happens to the data if it would cross the border. In the bill as written, you can imagine other nation states, other organizations being worried about doing business with Canada if it means that their data would be retained in this way and possibly accessed in this way.
So lots of room for improvement. This is a proposed bill, so hopefully they'll be looking at what the feedback is. What's at risk though if Canada doesn't pass this kind of legislation soon?
Yeah, the access to online data by police is really, really important for investigating the kind of crimes that are happening today, the kind of cyber espionage that's happening today. And without some kind of access provisions, the police are not really able to do their job in this way. This bill doesn't necessarily strike the right balance, but the experts are saying that it's salvageable. Like tweaks can be made to the definition of electronic service provider, the amount and the structure of the storage of data, and making really clear statements that encryption as a technology will not be touched. This is one of the big concerns that the Apples and Googles of the world are worried about, that even though there's a provision in the bill that says we probably won't make you break your software, there's a thing at the very end that says, well, and we might make some new rules that might do that after all. So if it can be very clearly stated that encryption will not be touched, and that the data that is retained and stored is smaller and for smaller periods of time, then it's possible to sort of salvage this bill.
Great. All right, David, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
That's David Gerhard with us live, head of the Department of Computer Science over at the University of Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We are live with Information Radio here in Manitoba and still ahead on the show after 7.
I think too often we are a bit too me too in our approach, and that also translates into some of our science. So this is being ahead of the curve. This is building something that other people will want to copy, as opposed to us being the follower.
We are going to hear more as we speak to one of the leaders of a new lab researching the impacts of wildfire smoke and other pollutants and the impact they have on our health. Stay with us. They're using human lung tissue to help with this. So we'll hear more about that aspect of it. You might have heard Heather mentioning this in the news, but we'll have a full interview on it after 7. Also after 7 o'clock, if you had an operation, imagine this, and then you learn much later that the surgery is not as useful as once thought, would you regret having that operation? Well, Dr. Christopher Labos is filling in for Dr. Bardwaj on our medical column today. He's going to talk about a knee procedure involving your meniscus that kind of fits that bill. And it took a long time for researchers to figure out that this surgery may actually not be the way to go. So if you've had knee trouble or knee surgery, you probably want to lean into this. That's on our medical column in the next hour of the show. Also in the next hour, a 124-year-old bridge in Winnipeg, as you might have heard in the news this week, will soon come down. The city says demolition for the Arlington Bridge will start next month, but some residents feel like it should have been done years ago. We're going to tap into exactly what people have been saying, and then we also are going to have a full interview about Arlington. Our guest this morning is a bridge projects engineer for the city of Winnipeg, so that's coming up just before 7 o'clock. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who's in our news center with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Premier Rob Canoe and his Alberta counterpart are getting into a bit of a spat over separation. At the Western Premiers meeting in Kananaskis yesterday, Canoe argued Alberta's referendum on separatism should be delayed by at least a year. He says all this talk is a distraction from work happening across the country to build mega projects. Canoe also argues Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is wrong to say the duty to consult with Indigenous people requires a second look. So we'll hear more on that coming up on World Report and again at 7:30. As well, the Manitoba Islamic Association says the rising cost of lamb may change how some Muslims celebrate Eid al-Adha today. We'll hear about the impact of the expensive cost of the meat coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks.
In your morning commute this Wednesday morning, pretty good. Make sure you bring the shades. Make sure you bring water, especially if you're walking on your bike. 788-3093 with any updates. Partly cloudy in Winnipeg right now, 15. Our high today is 29. Brandon, 13 degrees. You're going to 32 today. And in Thompson, mainly sunny and 5. You're heading for 21. A yellow heat warning has been issued for all of southern Manitoba. It does include around Brandon and Morden. And temperatures are going to be in the mid-30s for the rest of the week. Stay with us here from hot Manitoba. How quickly things change. We have more coming up on CBC's morning show right after World Report, which is up at 7 o'clock. It's 1 minute to.
On the current. I think I know what it is. Let's hear it. I think it's the apocalypse.
I'm Catherine Cullen. If the apocalypse was upon us, do you think billionaires with so-called doomsday bunkers would find out first? How would us regular folks find out quickly? We'll talk to Kyle McDonald, the creator of the Apocalypse Early Warning System, coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Energy Minister Tim Hodgson is in BC for a major announcement about liquefied natural gas. The deal with Germany could see up to 1 million metric tons of LNG exported annually. It would come from a planned facility off the northwest coast of British Columbia. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what is the significance of this deal?
The Silicim's production, storage and terminal facility on Pierce Island was referred to the Major Projects Office last November as a priority for federal approval. Once built, the plan is to export some 12 million metric tons of liquefied natural gas annually. Now, this particular deal today is going to take up 1 million of those tons. Earlier agreements already secured other buyers, but as BC Premier David Eby explained yesterday, the business case for Silicim's isn't there until enough offtake deals are in place.
A major announcement with a European partner of purchasing LNG gets us that much closer to final investment decision of this more than $10 billion investment in British Columbia and Canada.
The buyer in this deal is significant in and of itself. SEFA, which stands for Securing Energy for Europe, is a utility that was nationalized by the German government as part of the push to wean Europe off of Russian oil and gas. But the liquefied natural gas from this terminal that's north of Prince Rupert may be heading to Asia, not Germany, freeing up other LNG suppliers to then pivot to Europe. When we hear from Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson later this morning, he may say that working with the Germans on this is a win for the Carney government, trying to diversify Canada's exports and work more closely to support the security of European partners as the war in Ukraine continues. And because the Nisga'a Nation is a partner in this project and its chief is going to join the minister today, it's an example of a deal that provides First Nations economic development opportunities, furthering the reconciliation agenda in BC, which politically is a really hot file right now.
Well, Janice, this is not a done deal. It's also facing some controversy. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the pipeline to get the natural gas to the terminal for liquefaction, that's not built yet. Last month, British Columbia's Supreme Court heard 2 petitions challenging the provincial approval for the route for the 900-kilometre Prince Rupert gas transmission pipeline. A hereditary chief from the Gitxsan Nation, alongside local residents and environmental groups, argued that the environmental review was out of date and the route shouldn't cut across one of the last remaining untouched parts of the nation's territory without more consultation. It's a challenging case, pitting economic development opportunities for one nation against the cultural and environmental concerns of another.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Longtime federal minister Stephen Guilbeault is expected to announce today he is resigning his seat in the House of Commons. The environmental activist has expressed unease with the direction of the Carney government, how it's rolled back key pillars of Canada's climate and environmental policy. As Kate McKenna reports, Guilbeault is not the only one raising concerns.
So Stephen Guilbeault was a fantastic colleague, and he's not only from Quebec, he was my neighbor sitting next to me when he was a minister.
Health Minister Marjorie Michel is one of several Liberal cabinet ministers who say they're sorry to see Stephen Guilbeault go.
I really appreciate his work, his advocacy, and I'm fully respectful of his decision.
Sources tell CBC News this morning the Liberal MP is expected to tell his caucus colleagues he's planning to resign as a member of Parliament. Guilbeault has been critical of the Carney government's moves to roll back climate and environmental policy, some of which was put in place when Guilbeault was Environment Minister under Justin Trudeau. He resigned from Cabinet last November after the Prime Minister unveiled plans to work with Alberta to build a new pipeline to the West Coast. When the next phase of that deal was announced earlier this month, Guilbeault said he was reflecting on his future. Current Environment Minister Julie DeBruzen downplayed concerns.
Look, I think that we have a caucus that cares deeply about the environment, fighting climate change, and also about how we're going to build our country in this moment.
But Guilbeault is not the only MP feeling uneasy. More than a dozen Liberals recently wrote to the Prime Minister expressing concerns about the compromises being made to get more things built in Canada. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
The stories are painful to recount and often painful to hear. But the Permanent People's Tribunal says they are crucial testimony in its investigation into whether Canada committed genocide. CBC Indigenous reporter Joy Spearchief Morris takes us through some of what the independent tribunal has heard so far.
6 of us were transferred into the mush hole, and I was 6 at the time.
Roberta Hill is a residential school survivor. On Tuesday, 7 international judges heard from Hill and other survivors who recounted their experiences of abuse while at residential school. The Permanent People's Tribunal is in Montreal this week to hear testimony from over a dozen witnesses, including residential school survivors. Hill, who is from Six Nations, attended Mohawk Institute Residential School in Brantford, Ontario.
And after a while, they basically tell you to stop crying and get over it kind of thing. But you don't get over it.
Kimberly Murray provided evidence to the tribunal on Monday. She is the former special interlocutor on missing children and unmarked burials.
For those little lives stolen, those little lives lost, what great things could they have done if their lives weren't taken by the state?
Today, the tribunal will hear testimony from survivors of forced sterilization. An interim ruling is expected on Friday. Joy Spearchief Morris, CBC News, Montreal.
The war in Iran and the push for a peace agreement will be a major focus for U.S. President Donald Trump and his cabinet today. They were supposed to go to Camp David, but their cabinet trip has been postponed by a forecast for bad weather. So instead, they're gathering at the White House. Trump is still insisting his administration and Iran have largely negotiated a peace deal. But the negotiations appear to be in flux, with talks complicated by what the U.S. called defensive strikes carried out against Iran on Monday. Politicians in Bolivia are changing the law to make it easier to deploy armed forces at times of civil unrest. Police fired tear gas at protesters. Some responded by lighting firecrackers, the latest confrontation in 4 weeks of social and political turmoil. Bolivians are struggling with a cost of living crisis, and demonstrators want President Rodrigo Paz to roll back austerity measures. He has responded by cutting his salary and those of his cabinet ministers. Canadians are turning to artificial intelligence for medical advice, but it seems most of us want AI to support doctors, not replace them. Christine Burek has details.
A new survey shows nearly half of Canadians have tried using AI for medical advice, but many don't trust it. Nearly 7 in 10 would rather wait 2 weeks to see a doctor than get an instant AI diagnosis.
And even the people who told us they have really poor access to care, even they are saying that they would rather wait for a human doctor than
David Valentin is with Liaison Strategies, the firm that did the poll.
I think the worry now from the population is, what if it affects me? What if my care is diminished as a result of these new tools? What if my information is hacked or released in some way?
A second thing is people are really worried about the role of big tech companies in AI, and they're worried about the profit motives of these companies and how that might...
Dr. Anmol Verma is a professor of AI research and education in medicine at the University of Toronto. As doctors' offices across the country roll out AI technology to take notes rather than writing them by hand, only 31% of those surveyed say they support doctors using that kind of AI during their visits.
It was surprising that
Verma says policymakers need to do a better job reassuring Canadians that patient privacy is really being protected.
It is absolutely true that there is a risk of losing trust in the system, and we can't afford to do that.
Most experts say they wouldn't rely on AI for specific medical advice or share personal health information, but say it can be useful for learning about conditions and even helping patients prepare questions for a doctor's visit. Christine Burek, CBC News, Toronto.
Rescuers in central Laos say they have found 5 villagers stuck in a flooded cave alive. They've been trapped there for a week ever since they went to search for gold, and flash floods blocked their exit. Video posted by a Thai rescue group appears to show the villagers in a cave, each wearing a headlamp and sitting on a rock surrounded by floodwater. 2 people are still missing. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. Nice sunny morning out there, but we do have heat warnings in parts of the province because it's going to get above 30 and stay there for a while coming in the next few days. Thanks for joining us here in Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. This hour on the show, a new University of Manitoba lab is looking to measure how wildfire smoke affects our health. It is the first of its kind in Canada, so we're going to hear more about it. Also, what if you had an operation only to learn later that the surgery is not as useful as once thought and maybe it wasn't the right way to go? We're going to hear about that with a specific operation around a knee surgery. Dr. Christopher Labos is filling in for Dr. Bardwaj. He's here with our medical column right around 7:40. And Arlington Bridge, as you've been hearing in the news, lots of back and forth about how we're going to move forward. We'll talk to a city engineer this hour about Arlington. Demolition is set to start next month. Heather Wells is in with other news headlines that are developing this Wednesday morning. Hi, Heather. And I'm getting a signal. I don't know what it means. Is Heather's not there with us yet? Okay, so let's get into what's happening on your morning commute, which is very little, which is good. It is bright and sunny. You're going to want to put the shades on and the visor down. Sierra Sanders is in to update us. Have you heard anything on the commuter line?
I haven't. It's been pretty lonely on the commuter line, but I take that as a good sign that the commute is looking good for folks out there. Maybe they're enjoying the sunshine. I don't know how you're starting your day, but so far haven't heard about any big situations going on out there. But if that changes, no matter how you're getting around, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Quiet drive will be okay, thanks.
Yeah, sounds like a good deal, honestly.
Sierra Sanders with our midday week traffic here. We will get to our weather forecast in a moment. Heather does join us live now from our busy newsroom with headlines. Hello there.
Hello there. Just trying to keep up with the tired MLAs in the Manitoba legislature. They have been at it for 15 hours now. They have been debating through the night about the government's budget implementation bill. Starting around 4 yesterday afternoon, the PC is asking the NDP to ignore the clock. The NDP agreed. At issue, affordability. We're going to hear things that are going on, what's being said about the province's plan to cut PST off junk food and some ready-to-go meals from grocery stores. The Tories want a major income tax cut instead. So we'll hear the latest. As well, Winnipeg's mayor says despite more 7-Eleven convenience stores closing in this city, he is confident more will open. Last year, 10 7-Elevens in Winnipeg closed out of concerns of crime and employee safety. And in the past week, 2 more stores, including one at Notre Dame in Arlington, shut down. The mayor says the company tells him new stores will be opening in this city. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
All right, super, Heather. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's get into the forecast now with Abby Adiyemi.
Yes, Marcy, heat warnings in effect as temperatures climb to the 30s in parts of southern Manitoba. We're tracking it from the Pembina Valley region, spreading all the way into the Westman region, while for the Churchill and York region, it remains under this fog advisory as it's really causing near zero visibility, but that should clear as you get into the morning. For the city and nearby area here in the Red River Valley region, we're looking at mainly sunny skies. Some cloudy conditions will come in the mix. We're going to see that winds come from the east. Current temperatures really around 16 at this time. We're climbing steady to a high of 29 later today. And if you look at Thursday, it even looks hotter. We're getting to 34, followed by 35 on Friday. Conditions remaining well above normal. This time of the year, Marcy, usually 22 degrees, but we're already not even getting into summer yet. We're already dealing with like mid 30s and even close to 38 in some parts of the province. Across border, actually, we're looking at 10s, 11s, and 14s in the southern part of the province. Steinbach is saying 15 at this time, more than 14. Maleta is looking at 14 and Sprague 15 degrees. Winnipeg, we are at 16. We're aiming for a high of 29 today.
Well, this morning we continue to monitor an out-of-control wildfire in northern Manitoba, though there is still no immediate danger reported from a nearby community. We're talking about Chemawawin Cree Nation. Chief Clarence Easter yesterday said the wind shifted the fire towards Cedar Lake, that is away from the populated area. This is a community about 400 kilometers north of Winnipeg. But the images of people standing, in Chemawawin, looking up at the sky and seeing all of that thick smoke were really quite something. And after last year, what we went through here, probably pretty scary. So far, no negative news on that fire. Meantime, as you've been hearing in the news, a Canada First is happening in Manitoba, the University of Manitoba, opening an air-safe lab. It's going to look at ways to measure wildfire smoke's impact on our health. But not only that, it will also look at other pollutants like tobacco, e-cigarette, and cannabis smoke. Andrew Haleko is one of the co-leads of the Air Safe Lab, a professor over at Max Rady College of Medicine, and a Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in Young Pathobiology, and Treatment. And with us via Zoom. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
So tell me where the idea for this unique lab came from.
Well, it was an idea long in coming. So I have to give credit to my co-lead, Dr. Neelofer Mukherjee, who's not with us this morning. She's an immunologist working here in Winnipeg, and she connected with a colleague in BC at UBC who was doing human pollution exposure studies. And what Neelofer was doing was looking at some of the biomarkers that change in the lung and the blood of these individuals. And what came from that research was a striking realization that we can measure what happens to people when they breathe bad stuff, polluted air, but we don't really know why some people respond differently than others. So there was a real need to be able to study the mechanism by which the pollution was having different effects in different people. For example, people who we would consider at risk for air quality effects with people with asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So the idea was born out of that interaction. And then we are connected with a national network called the Canadian Respiratory Research Network, in which basically brings Canadian researchers in the lung field together. And through those interactions, this idea was born.
And
ultimately,
And it grew into the lab. I'm just going to interject because I want to hear how it's going to work. Like on site, what kind of methods are you going to use to help your research?
Yeah, so we're building a lab here at the Bannatyne campus of the University of Manitoba. We will have indoors a 3-cylinder diesel engine. We are having a custom-made biomass combustor built. We'll be able to generate pollutants from those, so we could simulate wildfires, simulate stubble fires, for example, grass fires. We think we're going to even be able to simulate house fires. We can run our diesel engine. We can combine those pollutants, or we can look at them individually. We can very carefully analyze what's in the pollution. So we have very fancy bank of gas analyzers. We can look at 30 different constituents, really get down and understand the particulates and their distribution there. And then ultimately we do controlled exposures of that pollution in very unique models of the human lung and other research models. So
just tell me if I'm making this too simplified, but are you blowing the pollutant then at like actual human lung tissue and then measuring sort of the result?
Basically, that's it. And so the ability to do that in a controlled manner and be able to understand what you're exposing the lungs to in all of its forms is really important. So we actually even have a system called an oxidation flow reactor, which will age the pollution. So imagine the wildfire you were speaking about when we started, 400 kilometers away from Winnipeg, I believe you said.
Yeah.
It might take 3 days before it gets to Winnipeg, depending on the wind. In that time, it's exposed to differences in humidity, temperature, and it's exposed to ultraviolet light. So it's generating ozone, which then can be converted into hydroxyl ions. So
breathing it there at source. Yeah, breathing it there at source versus breathing it further away. But not just that, breathing it on day 1 versus breathing it on day 3. And you'll be able to control and watch. That's fascinating. All of those things. You're also partnering with the Children's Hospital Research Institute, I understand, of Manitoba. How do children factor into your research?
Yeah, well, I've studied for many years asthma and its origins. So asthma really has its origins in the pediatric lifespan. So by age of 5, most people who have allergic asthma are diagnosed. So I have my lab here at Children's Hospital Research Institute of Manitoba, currently acting as a co-interim CEO for the Institute as we search for a new director. And so one of the things that we can do is we have a group of local researchers interested in the developmental origins of lung disease. What that means is if a pregnant mom is inhaling air pollution, what effect is that having on the fetus? And what happens to the health and the risk of the infants when they're born if mom perhaps experienced a really bad wildfire season in her during her pregnancy. So we're very interested in that, and how does mom inhaling pollution affect the fetus, which is in the womb. So we have researchers that are looking at how does the lung essentially talk to the fetus, because there's clearly not a direct connection.
I said in the introduction, obviously the big focus is wildfires for obvious reasons here, but that you also are looking at other kinds of, potentially other kinds of things like tobacco smoke, e-cigarette, but also cannabis smoke, which is not as researched as other pollutants. Will that work in the same manner using the same equipment that you're talking about?
Essentially, there are 2 different labs to do those studies, but in principle, yes, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same setup, but in 2 different places. And then, in fact, that is the lab that we call it the Recreational Combustible Exposures Lab. That is actually what is situated in the Children's Hospital Research Institute of Manitoba. I should also say that the Manitoba Lung Association has been a contributing partner to the funds that we use to do this, and they're going to be very helpful for us in disseminating publicly the interpretation of our data as it might pertain to people understanding whether they should go outside, the effects of vaping, during air pollution exposure. So one of the unique features of this lab that Dr. Mukherjee and I were really pushed for was to be able to do combined exposures to really try and simulate real life.
Yeah.
Most labs in Canada studying this kind of are doing this kind of research are looking at individual pollutants. So ozone alone, cigarette smoke alone.
But the reality is
diesel
we have all
exhaust
these things
alone.
layered, right? Before you go
Bingo.
this morning, Mr. Haleko, what does it mean to you just personally to be part of this first in Canada?
Well, it's really exciting because I've spent many years as a scientist, and in this business, you have to be a bit selfish when you start. You want to get students, you want papers, you want grants. So the deliverables you have are to advance your career so that you can get to a position where you can lead something and actually build something that might take a few years and have some runway to it. But when it delivers, it's actually making an almost immediate impact on the choices people make on a daily basis. We're very hopeful we will be, and we've already been chatting with provincial committees about, how to use the information that we're going to be able to generate. For example, studying ambient air in Winnipeg during wildfire season to deliver public health messaging and perhaps even consider ways of mitigating the effects in certain populations.
Lots of important implications moving forward. Once it's built, we'll have to come over and visit it. Congratulations on it, and thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Live on Zoom on CBC with us this morning is Andrew Haleko, co-lead of the AirSafe Lab, first of its kind in Canada, being developed, and he is a professor of the Max Rady College of Medicine, also Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in Lung Pathobiology and Treatment. So that lab is set to open later this year.
The puck may have dropped on the playoffs, but the news doesn't stop for hockey. I'm Brittany Greenslade, host of CBC Winnipeg News at 6. To get your local news, stream CBC Winnipeg News at 6, 24/7 on CBC Gem, the CBC News app, and selected streaming platforms. CBC Winnipeg News at 6, your local news on your favorite streaming device.
Got a bit of an update in traffic here to pass along to you from the Winnipeg Police. There's a working fire apparently in the 500 block of Messier Street. Motorists are asked to avoid the area and find other routes. Archibald is currently closed in both directions from Messier to Marion. So that's going to be a mess. And I did not mean to make a pun, but be careful around there. 788-3093. We have no other detail on the fire to this point. Right now, it is really hot in Winnipeg. It's 16 degrees, partly cloudy. I mean, that's really hot for this time of day. It's 7:25 a.m. Later, we're going to be a high of 29, and we do have that yellow heat warning in effect for southern Manitoba areas around Brandon and Morden. Temperatures are going to be in the 30s come later this afternoon and into tomorrow in the next few days. Well, let's get into the upset, the spoiler in the NHL hockey. And man, they seem to have done this once before, I remember, maybe more than once. Let's talk Vegas Golden Knights with Paul McGowan, who's filling in on Morning Sports for Scott Reguer today. Hey.
Hey, Marcy.
So, wow, not just through to the Stanley Cup final, but the Knights through in like definitive fashion, right?
Yeah, it's incredible to think about. I mean, yes, there's talent on that Golden Knights roster, but as you say, they were terrible for parts of this year. So bad that they fired their head coach with 8 games remaining in the regular season. And at that point, it was not a sure thing that they would even be in the playoffs. But that same team just swept the President's Trophy winning Colorado Avalanche. 4 straight games. Mark Stone scores the winner last night. An incredible turnaround for Vegas. And on the other side for Colorado, a devastating missed opportunity. And you can hear that devastation in the voice of head coach Jared Bednar.
Humility is certainly a word you can use for it. I think that losing sucks, and losing 4 straight is worse. And I think the further you go, the worse it gets. But I'll say this, like from day one, our guys gave us everything they got. It's a very, very good team that we lost to, and we'll have to reflect on our season and our series and go from there.
A bad day in Denver. Vegas, meanwhile, awaits the winner of Montreal and Carolina. Those 2 teams play Game 4 tonight. The Hurricanes leading the series 2-1.
And if you're cheering still looking for Manitoba connections on Vegas, of course, you've got Mark Stone from Winnipeg. And then there's also Keegan Colasar from Winnipeg. And then there's a third from Oakbank as well. I believe. Brett Howden. There we go.
Brett Howden.
Okay, let's get to other sports. Basketball, the fight continues for a spot in the NBA final.
Yeah, and the series out west is a series for the ages. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Thunder trying to, build that NBA dynasty that so many people think they're capable of. But they are in tough against Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs. The series was tied at 2. It's the Thunder, though, who gained the edge last night in Game 5. They win 127-114. They now sit just one game away from their second straight NBA final, and they earned the win last night, despite missing 2 of their top 4 scorers. Shai, after the game, was quick to credit the contributions of his teammates.
We don't get this far. I don't have this individual success. This team doesn't have this success without all 15 guys in the locker room, and we proved it tonight. If it was 4-5 me's out there, we would have been down 20 after the first quarter. But the guys were great to start the game. Probably should never start like that again and give us a better chance to win a ball game, but the guys held it down.
Shai is the picture of the overly humble athlete. Yes, he had a bit of an off game if you look at his shooting percentage. Still finished, though, with 32 points last night. Game 6 goes tomorrow. And in the WNBA, the Toronto Tempo are back in action tonight. They're in Chicago to face the Sky.
Let's end on tennis. A young Canadian tennis star is back where it all started.
Yeah, last year's French Open is where we all first took notice of Victoria Mboko. At that point in May of last year, she had never even competed in a Grand Slam, but she qualified, she reached the third round, and Mboko has been building a name for herself ever since. She was back on the court at Roland Garros yesterday, earned a straight sets victory to move on to round 2. A good start for her under new coach Wim Fissette.
Working with Wim, it's been very fun so far. He has such a history of working with slam champions, and he knows what it takes to get there. So bringing in that kind of experience for me, it kind of gives me a different perspective of what I can do to be in those kinds of positions. I think I can learn a lot from him.
Fissette has worked with a who's who of top tennis talent. That includes Naomi Osaka, Iga Swiatek. Both of them have been ranked number 1 in the world. Mboko is back on the court tomorrow. She faces Czechia's Katerina Siniakova.
All right. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thanks, Marcy.
Paul McGowan, Morning Sports, live on CBC. Just a reminder of what I just mentioned in traffic before we get into the news here. You want to avoid the 500 block of Messier Street. Avoid the area. Find other routes. Archibald is closed in both directions from Messier to Marion because of a working fire, according to Winnipeg Police. 788-3093 is where you reach us. And still ahead on the program, we have our medical column. Really interesting today. We've all heard about the placebo effect when it comes to taking pills. It's not a real pill. It's a sugar pill. They try to see whether or not that impacts things. But what about a placebo surgery? Stay tuned. We're going to hear all about that after the CBC News from Winnipeg.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. It's 7:30. Lots of sunshine out there. It's another really warm day. 15 right now. We're headed to 29 this afternoon. And there is a heat warning for parts of western Manitoba, including Brandon, as well as the Pembina Valley. Well, MLAs have been working all night, and they're still at it. They're sitting in the legislative chamber debating the government's budget implementation bill. The PCs say they're pushing the NDP to strengthen the bill with better affordability measures. CBC's Ian Fraze reports.
15 hours and counting. That's how long Manitoba's MLAs have been debating the NDP and PC parties, making sure at least some of their MLAs are sitting in the chamber at all times. This is a dispute about the government's budget implementation bill. Tory leader Abi Khan saying on Instagram overnight his party wants the NDP to change the bill. He argues removing the PST off some groceries amounts to only pennies in savings per grocery trip. Khan says the bill should include more substantial affordability measures. Meanwhile, the NDP, also on Instagram, arguing the PCs are blocking efforts to make life more affordable. There's no indication yet when the standoff could end. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Thanks so much, Ian. The Manitoba Islamic Association says the rising cost of lamb may change how some Muslims celebrate Eid al-Adha today. The festival of sacrifice is a traditional one for a lamb to be slaughtered and the meat shared with family, friends, and those in need. Norris Zeid at the Manitoba Islamic Association says the cost of lamb has skyrocketed in the last few years. He's heard of some families buying a small lamb for as much as $600.
It's starting to become a concern for some families, and I think some families are going to be taking some shortcuts and maybe not going after a whole lamb, maybe just getting some pieces and maybe getting lamb like donated through a relief agency where it's cheaper somewhere else, so they can do a whole lamb for somebody. Because people want to do a whole lamb, but right now sometimes it's just too costly.
Federal data shows the price of live lambs has jumped as much as 30% between 2024 and 2025. Winnipeg's mayor says despite more 7-Eleven convenience stores closing in this city, he's confident more will open. Last year, 10 7-Eleven stores across Winnipeg closed out of concerns of crime and employee safety. In the past week, 2 more stores, including one at Notre Dame in Arlington, have shut down. Mayor Scott Gillingham says it's not just a Winnipeg issue.
7-Eleven is going to a different model as well. And 7-Eleven, if you take a look at what's happening across North America, they've closed hundreds of stores across North America. So this is not just a Winnipeg thing. There have been 7-Eleven store closures across North America.
At his State of the City address in March, Mayor Gillingham used a Slurpee as a prop, saying 7-Eleven would be expanding in Winnipeg. He says when he last spoke to company officials, they told him new stores would be opening. The Western Premier's meeting ended yesterday with a difference of opinion.
Sorry, I'd like to respond. So I think we know that is not correct, a lot of what you just said there, Premier Smith.
Premier Wab Kinew. Alberta's Danielle Smith had said she was frustrated a judge quashed the separatist petition since her government failed to consult Indigenous people. She said that wasn't right, which led Kinew, who is Indigenous, to say this.
It is not up to the petition gatherers to fulfill the duty to consult. It is up to you as the Alberta government to fulfill the duty to consult. And in this case, when there's clearly going to be an impact on well-established existing hunting and fishing rights by putting up an international border, if some would have their way.
Kinew also says Alberta should pause a referendum on separation for a year or 2, given the nationwide momentum to build mega projects. Flavored vape products may soon be harder to buy. The province is introducing a law to tighten access. Flavored vape products would only be sold at age-restricted specialty stores. The measure aims to make it harder for youth to find those products. But Juliette Muka at the Manitoba Lung Association says the products will still be too easy to find.
The bill changes where flavored products are sold. It doesn't significantly reduce access to the flavored products themselves. And research consistently shows that flavors are one of the biggest drivers to youth vaping. So we need to make some meaningful changes.
Muka says while youth are already banned from buying vape products, they are still finding ways to get them. Some youth are buying from people they know, while others buy online. You can find more Manitoba news at our website. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells live in our news center this morning, and now it's time to check in with Abby for the regional forecast.
Yeah, stark divide today, Marcy, with the heat warnings gripping parts of southern Manitoba, while this persistent fog advisory still impacts the far north towards Churchill. The southern region sits in between 12 and 14 degrees with sunny conditions. Here in Winnipeg, we are at 16 under mainly sunny skies. We're climbing towards 29 today, and it's going to get windy from the east at some point.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Quick dip into the commute with Sierra Sanders.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet on the commuter line so far this morning, Marcy, but just again for folks who are just maybe tuning in now, we have a traffic advisory from the Winnipeg Police. There is currently a working fire in the 500 block of Messier Street, and motorists are asked to avoid the area and find other routes as Archibald Street is currently closed in both directions from Messier Street to Marion Street. So a pretty big closure closure there, you might want to find a workaround before you head out if you're just getting ready to head out on the roads. But you can give me a call if a new situation pops up. I'd love to hear about it. 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks, Sierra. Well, we want to reiterate something Heather's been mentioning this morning already, because yesterday on the show at this time, we had an interview about Indigenous designs being taken and resold online and elsewhere. Staff over at Indigenous Nations Apparel Company, or INAC, in Polo Park, that's a store in Polo Park, they were shocked to discover the designs showed up on another company's website on Friday. Shein is the fast fashion retailer, and it had about 20 designs from the INAC website for sale on its site. So Michelle Cameron was our guest yesterday here live, the owner and founder of INAC. She called on the online retailer to take those products down. Here, before we give you the update, is a bit more of the conversation in case you missed it.
I think about this all the time, and I just hope that others that see their stuff on their website stand up and at least contact them and ask them to remove it, because you shouldn't be profiting off Indigenous art, Indigenous stories. We're all really upset about it. A lot of anger is coming from it. And I knew it happened to us, and it wasn't just one design. It was like almost our entire line was taken and stolen. But what it did was it brought light to others that are happening. It's happening to them. So I hope something comes from this. I hope that Shein stops using our art as a trend, as a way to profit, because that's what's happening. This big national company is profiting from our designs and our artwork.
Now, here's the update. Shein is the apparel company at the heart of the story, and they did respond. We didn't have a response yet yesterday, but they have written to CBC Manitoba, and a company spokesperson says, quote, "When we were made aware that the products in question were being sold on Shein Marketplace by third-party sellers, we immediately removed the listings from our platform and launched an investigation." The spokesperson also said, quote, "Shein requires sellers to comply with company policy and certify that their products do not infringe third-party intellectual property. We take all claims of infringement seriously and act swiftly when valid complaints are raised by IP rights holders. We continue to invest in and strengthen our processes to ensure partners adhere to our strict policies," unquote. So some development there in that story. If you want to read more about it, and this is, Michelle's right, this is not the only case of this in Canada. We've had past stories on CBC where there's been problems with infringement involving other large companies as well. But you can read this one at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Time right now is 21 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM. And let's get to a really, really interesting medical column this morning because it's about the placebo effect. Now, you've probably heard about that before. When it comes to healing, our minds can be powerful things. Researchers studying new medicines always need to account for a possible placebo effect. So that is when a patient reports improved health, even if, unbeknownst to them, all they were taking was a sugar pill that they were told was a real medication, a real drug. But when it comes to surgical procedures, it's a lot harder to rule out the placebo effect. To talk more about how it can be possible, Dr. Chris Labos is filling in for Dr. Bardwaj today. He's a cardiologist and epidemiologist. He's been looking at new research that shows a once popular knee surgery is not as effective as previously thought.
Good morning.
So tell us about the surgery that's grabbing your attention right now.
So this is about the meniscus. So the meniscus is this cartilage that's in your knee. It's basically padding of your knee joint. And so you have two sort of half moon shaped pads in each of your knees. And it's there to absorb shock when you walk, jump, or use your knee joint in any way. So it serves an important biological function. But with most things in life, the meniscus can wear and tear with time. And it is very common to find meniscal tears in patients. So removing or trimming the meniscus was a very, very common surgery when you saw a patient with knee pain. And it made a lot of sense because it was assumed that it was going to get rid of the source of pain, maybe reduce the incidence of arthritis. It was a very common surgery. We did about 700,000 of them per year at the height of their popularity. And it made a lot of sense because you were removing something damaged from your body, and people did feel better when they had the surgery. The only problem is it doesn't actually work.
So tell us more about this recent data that suggested, as you said, doesn't work.
So this was the Fidelity study that was published in 2013, and it's important because it was a sham surgery study. There had been other studies suggesting that removing the meniscus was maybe not a good idea, but it was always easy to brush them off because the patients also had other knee problems. They also had arthritis. the Fidelity study was the first study to take a subset of patients that had pure meniscal problems. So all they had was a torn meniscus and nothing else. So it was a very sort of clean patient population. But more importantly, it was a definitive study because they used a sham surgery control, meaning they subjected patients to a sham surgery, meaning the patients thought they were going in for a surgical procedure, but they weren't actually getting anything removed.
Got it. Can you elaborate a little bit? So is it the equivalent, a sham surgery then, of a placebo, as we said, taking a sugar pill, but you think it actually has medication?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. A sham surgery is basically the surgical equivalent of a placebo medication. So when you're designing a new medication, like if you and I went into business together and founded our own pharmaceutical company and we wanted to prove that our pill worked, it's very easy to do a placebo-controlled trial. All you have to do is make a pill that looks and tastes and feels the same as the original, and then the patients won't know if they're getting the original or the placebo medication. And so you can actually see how much of it is patient expectation and how much of it is the actual medication doing a biological effect. But for surgery, it's obviously harder because people know if they had surgery or not. So what you have to do with a sham surgery is make people think they had a surgery they didn't actually have. So you take them, you get them prepped, you wheel them down to the operating room, you have the entire surgical team there scrubbed and gowned, wearing their masks. They go through the motions of doing a surgery. You can actually play fake background sounds so the patients think that you're actually cutting and sawing into them, or you even put them under and then wake them up immediately. The point is that the patients should come out of the operating room not knowing if they actually had the surgery or not. That is an appropriate sham control, and that's what they did with the Fidelity study.
I had no idea they even did that. Are there other examples of sham surgery?
There have been a few. It is not as common as probably it should be, but there was a time when it was very common to put pacemakers in people who would faint suddenly because, again, it made a lot of sense, right? Somebody's fainting, put a pacemaker in them so they don't faint. And this was routinely done until researchers actually tested it formally, because you had a lot of studies showing that people who got pacemakers fainted less. But when you did a sham surgery, basically everybody in the study got a pacemaker, but only half of the people had their pacemakers turned on. So some people got an unnecessary pacemaker that was left off. But it turned out the fainting rates were the same in both groups. So it wasn't that the pacemaker was keeping your heart functioning. For a variety of complex reasons, getting a pacemaker going through the surgery made people faint less because patient expectation is a powerful thing.
Let's get back to this meniscus then. Why is it relevant now?
Well, it's relevant now for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're doing 700,000 meniscal surgeries a year, that's a lot of wasted healthcare resources if the thing doesn't work. And the original Fidelity study, one of the criticisms that was leveled against it was that, well, maybe in the long term, you'll see a benefit. Having this damaged tissue in your knee for 10 years is not going to be good for you. And so what we have now is we have the 10-year follow-up data, which was just published, and it showed that removing the meniscus, having the real surgery made no difference. In fact, the people who got the real surgery were a little bit worse than the control group. They actually had more pain relative to the other group. So I think it underscores that this was an unnecessary surgery, that it was making people worse. And it also demonstrates to what degree sham surgery controls are important in the field of medicine, because they can expose things, surgeries, procedures, medications, whatever. They can expose things that seem intuitively obvious but are not actually beneficial to patients.
So interesting. I understand that that they might even put a little incision and put a bandage over to really convince people too, right?
Yeah, exactly. The whole point is you make people think they had the surgery without them cutting into the deep tissue.
So just before you go this morning, what would you say the take-home message should be, especially if someone, has some problem with their meniscus?
So there's an old joke in surgery that surgeons often approach problems and say, when in doubt, cut it out. That's a bit of a joke, but I think for the meniscus, it's, when in doubt, leave it in, because it was very, very common and very intuitive for people to want to clean up the knee when they were in there to trim back the damaged meniscus. But I think it shows that we should be leaving it alone. This is a major sea change in the field of medicine. But I think it just underscores the importance of placebo-controlled trials. We do it for medications. We don't do it as much for surgeries. And I think it should just sensitize people to the power of the placebo effect.
All right, Dr. Labos, thank you.
My pleasure. You take care.
That's Dr. Christopher Labos, an epidemiologist and cardiologist. He is filling in for Dr. Bardwaj this morning on our medical column on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you for joining us on this hot, bright, sunny Wednesday morning in Winnipeg and across southern Manitoba. Yellow heat warning for Brandon, Morden. We're going to look at 30s for the next couple of days. In Winnipeg today, we'll soar to a high of 29 degrees. Right now it's 16 in Winnipeg. Brandon's mostly cloudy to start, but it's 14 already. And Thompson's sunny and currently 7 degrees. Well, let's dip into what is happening with one of the big bridges in the city of Winnipeg. After 124 years, the Arlington Bridge will be demolished next month. So it was closed in 2023 because of concerns about structural integrity. This week, the City Council Public Works Committee approved a further $10 million in the demolition contract for 1/3 of the bridge. Now, with previously financial commitments from the city in total, we're talking $17.7 million of the project's total $22 million project already committed. CBC's Sophia Peralta-Barone spoke to some Manitobans who live near the bridge about the impact.
Helen Ruth Parent.
And Helen, how long have you lived in this area for?
Over 18 years, going on 19 years.
How do you feel to first see it close down in 2023? What were your sort of feelings when you saw that?
Well, it's made it harder to get to the different places you had to go. We always used to use the bridge. When my grandson was just a baby, I used to walk over the bridge with him in the stroller and that. I rode my bike over it a lot of times because it was easier to get that way. Now you got to either come down Salter Bridge or around McPhillips. So,
Robin Beshta. We lived here about 3-4 years. I used to live in Manitoba Avenue. Well, it brings back memories when you're little and how things were. I know it's old and it has some problems, and how much does it cost to fix compared to how much? It's like a car. You reach a point that it's not worth fixing anymore. So it's the same thing here. You're going to reach that point and say, well, it's not worth fixing.
Ryan Friesen. I think it should have been, the railway should have been taken out of here, that should have been all made into housing, and that if the bridge needs to be done, then we should have done it a long time ago.
Well, how long ago are we talking about?
15 years ago, at least.
The city says they're going to use around like $17 million to demolish 1/3 of it, and the budget is $22 million. And they're predicted to go over budget. What's your reaction to that?
Well, that's a lot of money. They should have did that a long time ago.
Well, everything goes over budget. I don't think there's anything that's, before they start building, it's going to be this much. And then look at the police station example. So everything is expensive now, but I think they have to do something with it.
My thoughts are that the city can't do any kind of planning on anything, such as the waste treatment plant being so far over budget, the fact that the police station so far over budget. Somebody needs to be accountable for the actions of when these budgets go way over cost. They're saying 17 million, bet you it'll be a lot more than that.
So those are some people in the area around Arlington Bridge speaking to CBC's Sophia Peralta-Barone about their thoughts on the budget, but also on the bridge demolition that's upcoming. So Public Works Chair Councillor Janice Lukes has said that demolition costs have increased, and she says it's because Canadian Pacific Kansas City Railway, CPKC, changed its mind about a less expensive demolition plan. The railway says that's not true. They say they didn't change their mind. They're still working on the city with a demolition plan. So there's the truth is somewhere in between those two conflicting opinions. Let's talk about what is actually going to be happening, though, and what we know is going to be happening. Dimir Muher-Devarovich is a bridge projects engineer for the city of Winnipeg, and he joins us now. Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
So tell me what we know. What does this demolition plan look like now? What does it mean? What's going to happen first?
Well, this year, just to start, I was listening to the last few minutes here as I joined a couple of minutes ago. It's true. We're demolishing we're calling it the southern half of the bridge. It's about 1/3 in reality, but it's the southern portion. So we're demolishing the south ramp that's adjacent to Logan Avenue this summer, as well as the first 5 spans, the smaller spans. this year, and then leaving the three larger spans, the camelbacks is what we call them, the ones that are the bridge is known for, as well as the north ramp, the one at Dufferin Avenue, for next year.
And tell me why. Is this all because of cost, or is there something about the demolition project when you look at it structurally that makes this plan what you've chosen?
It's a bit of both. One is, I guess, the single biggest non-operational factor is the railway, is CPKC. The only time frame that the city is allowed to work on CPKC property over the active tracks is during the months of July and August. And it is simply impossible to go over, or sorry, to take out the entire bridge just over those 2 months, which is why we decided to split the demolition into two summer seasons. So we're doing what I just described this summer, and we're hoping to do the second half next summer.
I'm looking for some clarity here, and I'm hoping you have it. Will you be able to use explosives in the demolition process?
We're not using any explosives for the first half, for the one that we're doing this summer. We're doing traditional methods, so machinery, excavators pulling down the ramp, as well as what we called, or what we're calling an SPMT, so self-propelled modular transporter, to take out the 5 spans that are over the CPKC rail tracks, which is a machine that's going under the tracks, or sorry, under the spans, lifting up. Then we're cutting the spans at the ends, and it's kind of taking it out in one piece, and then we're demolishing it as it's away from the tracks. We're doing that method so that we're minimizing the impact on the tracks and minimizing the closure of the tracks for the railway.
Would it be
as far as the second next year's half goes, we're still working on what kind of demolition methods. We're working with the railway on what kind of demolition methods will be accepted and what kind of demolition methods are actually feasible, because the spans on the second half, the north half, are much larger, so it's not quite the same as what we're doing right now.
Got it. And from an engineering perspective, would it be beneficial to have explosives be part of the demolition process on either, either on what you're doing this year or on what you have in the future?
Well, what I can tell you is that explosives, and when we're talking about explosives, we're not talking about blowing up the entire bridge or even blowing up a single span. Using explosives would mean that we just would put explosives on per each span at the end of the span, so that when they are set off, the span would just drop on top of the tracks, which of course would be protective if that was the case. I can tell you that this would be the quicker method to do the work. Is using explosives, but not necessarily cheaper or not necessarily the most beneficial method to all parties involved.
It's interesting too, because it's unique, because Councillor Lukes has shared it's important for people to understand taking the bridge apart over, as you said, a rail line is not common over an active rail line in this country. How does that add to the complexity of the project?
It is making it very particular, very unique, like you said. We are working with the railway. The railway has agreed to close tracks at the times when we are taking the spans down and so on. But in order to work with the railway, well, one, like I described, we only have the window of July and August to do the work. And the second thing is that the railway is trains are running on a very tight schedule, a very particular schedule. So we have to kind of work with the railway and go with the track closures that they are giving us. For example, we could be taking a span down, and an important train could be coming by, and we would have to stop all the work and wait for the train to pass, then reopen the work and close the track and so on.
You really have to coordinate.
Extremely important, extremely particular. And I mean, it only makes sense because it's a large yard with 52 active tracks under the bridge, and it's just a very challenging project.
Let me ask you about the steel. So a good portion of Arlington is steel. I'm curious how much of it, and does that make it profitable? Can we recoup some of the money by selling the steel? I understand that it might be too old.
Yeah, that's a good question. Most of the steel, the actual bridge structure, is beyond reuse. The only component that we may be able to use on future projects or in future locations is the railing. the railing at next to the roadway, adjacent to the sidewalk, is the only part of the steel or any part of the structure that we'd be able to salvage and reuse.
And how much of a percentage of Arlington is that? It seems pretty minor.
That's pretty minor. We're mostly using it because it's in okay shape, and we use standard railing for most bridge structures, so that's why we're reusing it. But it is minor. I would say it's under 5%.
Yeah. How is it going to be for you, just as a last question, to be part of this project? I mean, it's historic, obviously, and how are you feeling about it as we get ready to begin?
Well, I'm very excited. I've never taken part of any kind of a large demolition of like this, the Arlington Bridge. The Arlington Bridge in itself is a historic structure. Like you said, it's over 100 years old, and taking any part of it down is unique, is different.
Absolutely. You've just your feed's just frozen, but you know what? That is near the end of our interview here at any rate. So we thank...
But it's going to be interesting to see it come down.
Thank you very much for being with us, Demir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
With us live via Zoom, that is Demir Muhudarovich, who is a bridge projects engineer for the city of Winnipeg. A Public Works report describes the future costs associated with demolition project as TBD. In a meeting on Monday, Councillor Lukes acknowledged the final two-thirds of the bridge may push the project over the $22 million price tag. We will have more details moving forward as we get them for you. Moving forward on the show today, after over 30 years on the job, and Chris Schmidt is leaving firefighting. He's seen many changes in the fire and paramedic service and as chief. As he departs, he takes a look back at its evolution in Winnipeg and tells us what he thinks the service needs for the future. So stay tuned. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for headlines.
Good morning. Well, MLAs have been in the chamber all night long, and so far this morning they are still debating the NDP government's budget implementation bill. The opposition, Progressive Conservatives, asked the NDP to ignore the clock yesterday around 4 in the afternoon. At issue affordability, the PC say the NDP's budget falls short. They want a major income tax cut. The Manitoba Islamic Association says the rising cost of lamb may change how some Muslims celebrate Eid al-Adha today. On the Festival of Sacrifice, it's traditional for a lamb to be slaughtered and the meat shared with family, friends, and those in need. Norris Zeed at the Manitoba Islamic Association says he has heard of some families buying a small lamb for as much as $600. We'll hear more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
It is 16. We're headed for a high in Winnipeg of 29 degrees. Thanks to Heather Wells for our news center. Quick thing in traffic, you want to avoid Messier Street to Marion because Archibald in that stretch actually avoid it. It's currently closed.
Your baby's gonna look just like you, but thankfully not too much. Okay?
She's toured all over the U.S. and Canada, opened for the likes of Ronnie Chang and Rick Mercer. She's written for hit TV shows, and she gave up a well-paying job in the corporate world to be an artist. Who is it? Find out on Q.
Q with Tom Power, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Catherine Cullen. If the apocalypse was upon us, do you think billionaires with so-called doomsday bunkers would find out first? How would us regular folks find out quickly? We'll talk to Kyle McDonald, the creator of the Apocalypse Early Warning System, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Energy Minister Tim Hodgson is in BC for a major announcement about liquefied natural gas. The deal with Germany could see up to... It would come from a planned facility off the northwest coast of BC. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau this morning. Janice, what is the significance of this deal?
The Silicium's production, storage, and terminal facility was referred to the Major Projects Office last November as a priority for federal approval. Once built, the plan is to export some 12 million metric tons of liquefied natural gas annually. But as BC Premier David Eby explained yesterday, the business case for Silicium's isn't there until enough offtake deals are in place.
A major announcement with a European partner of purchasing LNG gets us that much closer to final investment decision of this more than $10 billion investment in British Columbia and Canada.
When we hear from Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson later this morning, he may say that working with the Germans on this is a win for the Carney government, trying to diversify Canada's exports and work more closely to support the security of European partners as the war in Ukraine continues. And because the Nisga'a Nation is a partner in this project and its chief is going to join the minister today, it's an example of a deal that provides First Nations economic development opportunities.
Well, Janice, this is not a done deal. It's also facing some controversy. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the pipeline to get the natural gas to the terminal for liquefaction, that's not built yet. Last month, British Columbia's Supreme Court heard 2 petitions challenging the provincial approval for the route for the 900-kilometre Prince Rupert gas transmission pipeline. A hereditary chief from the Gitxsan Nation, alongside local residents and environmental groups, argued that the route shouldn't cut across one of the last remaining untouched parts of the nation's territory without more consultation. It's a challenging case, pitting economic development opportunities for one nation against the cultural and environmental concerns of another.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Former Liberal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is expected to announce today he is resigning as a member of Parliament. Guilbeault has been critical of the changes Prime Minister Mark Carney has made to climate policy. Last year, he quit cabinet after Ottawa's energy deal with Alberta was made public. Guilbeault is not the only MP feeling uneasy. More than a dozen Liberals recently wrote to Carney, raising concerns about the compromises being made to get more things built in Canada. Israel says it has killed the newest military chief of Hamas with an airstrike on Gaza City. Gaza health officials say that attack killed a total of 6 people. Israel's military is also intensifying attacks in Lebanon. The CBC's Willie Lowry has more from Jerusalem.
Crowds gather in the Al Rimal neighborhood west of Gaza City, surveying the damage of yet another Israeli airstrike. This one, Israel's military says, targeted Hamas's new military chief, Mohammed Odeh. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, said Odeh was killed in the strike and thanked the IDF for the brilliant execution. Katz said Odeh was responsible for intelligence during the October 7th attacks. Last night's strike comes just 11 days after Israel killed Hamas's previous military leader. The country appears to be increasing its military efforts in both Gaza and Lebanon, despite U.S. brokered ceasefires in both places. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the Israeli military to increase its efforts in Lebanon, where Hezbollah militants continue to attack Israeli soldiers and communities in the north. Netanyahu says, under my directive and that of the defense minister, together with the IDF chief of the general staff, we are intensifying our operation in Lebanon. Lebanon's health ministry says 31 people were killed on Tuesday in Israeli strikes and at least 40 others injured. Yara Hamadeh is with Save the Children in Beirut.
We are witnessing intensified airstrikes on civilians.
The two countries are expected to enter a 4th round of U.S.-mediated negotiations next week in Washington. Willie Lowry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Alexis Tsipras, the prime minister who led Greece during its debt crisis, is trying to make a political comeback. His supporters chant at a rally in Athens. Tsipras took a controversial anti-austerity stance more than a decade ago, and Greece was almost kicked out of the Eurozone. He's now launching a new political party, the Greek Left Alliance. It's pledging to restore the rule of law and independence of institutions. Political observers say Tsipras is hoping to tap into widespread mistrust of government over corruption scandals. The next election in Greece is next year. The head of the World Health Organization is in Democratic Republic of Congo to assess the Ebola outbreak. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says the crisis is outpacing international efforts to contain it. So far, there are more than 220 suspected Ebola deaths and more than 1,000 presumed cases. As Jennifer Lagrassa reports, as the outbreak grows, Canada is enforcing new travel and immigration restrictions.
We're taking the necessary measures to protect Canadians.
Canada's Minister of Immigration and Refugees, Lena Metlej-Diab, announced a 90-day pause on processing visas and other immigration documents from citizens of Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, and South Sudan. That's because of a large-scale Ebola outbreak in those regions, which has reached 1,000 suspected cases and hundreds of deaths, many of them in Congo.
I think we are very low risk in Canada.
Federal Health Minister Marjorie Michel says these new measures were driven by the upcoming FIFA World Cup games, which are headed to Canada next month.
We are in summertime, and during FIFA, I think the risk will be higher.
The government is also ramping up screening for the next 3 months. Starting this weekend, Canadians or foreign nationals who have been to the impacted regions in the past 21 days must have a health assessment. Anyone with symptoms could be transferred to hospital or required to self-isolate.
I think it's absolutely a reasonable approach.
Dr. Isaac Bogosh is an infectious disease specialist in Toronto. He thinks these measures are helpful.
It's going to reduce the already low risk.
But he says Canada also needs to increase efforts on the ground to get the outbreak in Central Africa, driven by a rare strain of the Ebola virus, under control, a disease that currently has no approved treatment or vaccine. Jennifer Lagrassa, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
Rescuers in central Laos say they have found 5 villagers stuck in a flooded cave alive. They've been trapped there for more than a week, ever since they went to search for gold and flash floods blocked their exit. Video posted by a Thai rescue group appears to show the villagers in the cave, each wearing a headlamp and sitting on a rock surrounded by floodwater. 2 people are still missing. Getting around on an electric moped or motorcycle in Ontario could soon become more complicated. The province is looking to reclassify them as motor vehicles. Currently, they're e-bikes under the provincial law. But as Giacomo Panico reports, owners could soon need a license and insurance.
Well, you got your high beams, your low beams, turn signals, horn.
Peter Boucher proudly shows off his shiny new electric moped. It follows the existing rules on e-bikes in Ontario, meaning he doesn't need a license, registration, or insurance. Important factors, says Boucher, since he lives on a fixed income.
But if they regulate it, I can't afford that, and that's the end of me for, driving my scooter.
The CEO of the Insurance Brokers Association of Ontario points out that heavy e-bikes that are more akin to mopeds and motorcycles should be treated differently than bicycles. Colin Simpson says without insurance, governments are often on the hook to cover accident expenses.
Because no one individual is likely to be able to afford to pay for the claims that they create and the damage they create through a single vehicle accident. But if you're part of the risk, you need to be part of the solution.
If adopted, the changes mean Ontario would be the first province to require insurance for slow-speed electric mopeds. The Canadian Electric Bicycle Association, which represents e-bike retailers, says the government is overreacting to concerns about riders who operate e-bikes illegally on roads and sidewalks. Ontario's Ministry of Transportation says enforcement would only start after a 12-month education campaign, but they wouldn't provide a launch date. Nonetheless, it seems Peter Boucher's time with his cherished moped is running out.
I love this thing. I'm going to hate to have to give it up. I really would.
Giacomo Panico, CBC News, Ottawa.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. World Report is among the most popular podcasts in Canada. Don't miss out. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
You're live on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. It is beautiful outside, but really hot. And that's going to come with a lot of caution because hotter than it should be at this time of year. We actually have some warnings around the heat, and we'll get into those in a few moments. This half hour on the show, we will have a feature interview with the outgoing Fire and Paramedic Chief Christian Schmidt about the challenges of the firefighter paramedics face, what challenges they're facing today, also how the job has changed over 30 years, and some of his memories of his long service in our community. So stay tuned. We have a feature interview about that. Also, Marjorie Dalhouse will be in to talk about the Radio Noon call-in. The phone lines have sure been busy. They started opening them earlier. So every day at 12:15, you can call CBC on a topic of the day. Marge will be here to tell us what that is today. First, let's go to Heather Wells, and she is in with news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a halal grocery store owner in Winnipeg says the rising cost of lamb has made it harder for some Muslims to buy the animal or the meat ahead of today's Eid al-Adha. On this day, it's traditional for a lamb to be slaughtered and the meat shared with family, friends, and those in need. Khaldoon Majani at Al Sham Food says in his more than a decade of running that store, the cost of lamb has nearly doubled. Winnipeg's mayor says despite more 7-Eleven convenience stores closing in the city, he is confident more will open. Last year, 10 7-Elevens closed out of concerns of crime and employee safety, and in the past week, 2 more shut down. Mayor Gillingham says when he last spoke to 7-Eleven officials, they told him new stores would be opening in this city. I'll be back with more Manitoba News coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you very much,
you.
Heather. Well, Heather was just mentioning Eid al-Adha today, and we actually got a call.
Good morning. My name is Sayyid Uwais Ahmed. I'm calling in to give Eid greetings. So today it is, so here it goes. Hello, everyone. Eid Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum. And I wanted to wish happy Eid to everybody because today is the second Eid we celebrate of the year. It is in continuity of the month of Hajj that happens in Makkah. Millions of Muslims gather there, celebrating the sacrifice of Prophet Ibrahim. And we are celebrating, having a lot of festivities in Winnipeg as well today and through this week into the weekend. So have fun, enjoy, and join us in any of the mosques. Happy Eid to everyone. Eid Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, Eid Mubarak back. It's nice to hear about the community today. It's going to be busy around town, of course, Abby.
Yes, Marcy, Eid Mubarak also to our Muslim brothers and sisters, and it's really beautiful weather condition for celebration. Though we're going to be dealing with this split weather today, we're seeing heat waves gripping parts of the southern regions where we have heat warnings in effect around the Pembina Valley region, spreading all the way into the Westman region, while the far north contends with this lingering dense fog around the Churchill area. Still temperatures below zero. We're tracking -1 there at this time. Here in Winnipeg, we're beginning the day with more like bright and sunny conditions. We're tracking 17 degrees both at the airport and at the Forks at this time. Though expect a hot day ahead as we climb to a high of 29 today. The winds will pick up from the east throughout the day. Conditions will remain hot for the remainder of the rest of the week as we see temperatures climbing to 34 and 35 by Friday. And similar conditions across the southern regions. We're seeing 17s, 15s, 16s.
It's wild.
And then if you look even into the northern part, we're seeing 11 degrees and 10 degrees and 9 degrees and 13 in the northern part of the province, except for Churchill, still stuck below zero at -1. To the lake, we're tracking 7 degrees there. But for the city of Winnipeg, we're enjoying more like bright start. 17 now. We warm close to 30 later.
It's crazy. It's my first day with sandals and we're already talking over 30. It's nuts. Sierra, what's up in traffic?
Yeah, Marcy, we had been talking about a closure due to a working fire in the 500 block of Messier Street, and police were asking motorists to find a different way because of road closures. Those roads are now open. So that was Archibald Street, from Messier to Marion Street. Those roads are now all open, so traffic should be moving through there as crews work on that situation there. As well, I got a quick call from George here during the news break about Abinogi-Mikana, just past going westbound, just past the Pembina overpass there. You mentioned that there was cement that had come loose from the roadway and was causing some issues for drivers as drivers were driving, and the cement kind of was breaking and was kind of going all over the place. So there was one really important place, one area kind of just past the westbound Pembina overpass there, and then about a kilometer later there was some more broken cement there. So drivers having to kind of weave around that and be aware of that. Their city crews look like to be on the scene assessing the situation, but I'll keep an eye on that here for the rest of the show. But the number to call if something does get in your way here is 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, Christian Schmidt is saying farewell to his role as Winnipeg's fire and paramedic chief after serving over 30 years in the department and almost 5 years at the head of it. Schmidt is in studio with us today to talk about the challenges he's seen and the changes in the department over the years and words of advice for the incoming chief. Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you thinking about your younger self when you were dreaming of being a firefighter today and you're thinking of looking back?
Yeah, the time sure flies by. I can't believe 33 years coming up. August 23rd will be the anniversary. So, yeah, it goes by very quickly.
In a flash.
Yeah, but it's been a fantastic career.
This is almost unfair because you have 33 years to draw from, but I do wonder whether or not you have a proudest moment on the job, and it might have been out saving or fighting a fire, or there's things that we don't hear about that you do each and every day, of course, and everyone, the other members as well. But do you have a story you're going to take with you?
There are several, but one of the key things that I'm going to take with me is the work that we've done as a team. And when I say that, it's everybody in the department. When I came into office in 2021, you can look back at some of the news articles and things that were reported widely in the media regarding, relationships, things going on in the fire paramedic service between firefighters and paramedics, and some of it wasn't very positive. That's all changed, and it's changed due to what people wanted in their workplace, and as leadership. And when I say that, the administration and our union partners as leaders, we've put things in place that have allowed people to make their workplace a better place to be. And so we're in a better place. And at the end of the day, that allows our people to go out and serve the public better each and every day.
That service has changed too, obviously. So if we look at some of the past 6 years, I don't have to tell you that there's been an increase in the number of structure fires, a 13% increase between 2020 and 2024 alone. Firefighters are responding to higher volumes of medical calls, partially due to the toxic drug crisis in our community. It does take a toll. So you mentioned the union. They say 200 firefighters are on leave at any given time. It's a lot of pressure for people on the job. What do you think needs to happen to relieve that pressure?
So that's just the firefighter numbers. We see over 100 paramedics as well on leave. So that's a total of 300 staff that we don't have available in the workplace. And more importantly, these are people that are not able to come to work right now. And that has impacts on not only themselves, but their families. So that's an important aspect that we need to look at here. But this unified model that we've been operating in Winnipeg since the early 2000s, it's saved a lot of people. It's done good things for the community, but it needs some investments. When we look at our ambulance utilization rates, they're very high. So are the fire utilization rates. But this unified model that we have, where we have firefighter paramedics deployed on fire apparatus, we've really wrung every ounce of efficiency out of that model. And so we're starting to see impacts on our fire response times. And so we need some investments in our ambulance EMS operation here.
I was going to interject on that point. So just to explain to people, because they may not know what that means, you said the ambulance utilization rates are part of something you think that need to be have more investment or be improved. So what does that mean?
So EMS systems, typically when we look at an emergency medical system with ambulance utilization, typically the utilization for an emergency unit should be around 45%. In Winnipeg, we've seen these rates rise over time, and we've got units now that are operating at 84% unit hour utilization. That's just far too busy.
Why does that happen?
Essentially, what that means is when there's a call for 911 for an ambulance response, it means the ambulance is already busy, so it's not available to respond
so you have to
the
go.
911 call. So
firefighters go.
So the firefighters go. So there needs to be some investments. We've made, continual requests to Shared Health Manitoba for those investments, and we're hoping that the discussions that we have are going to yield some positive results here.
So that's investments in, is that more, is that more ambulances, more paramedics than in the service? So you guys are free to do the fire calls?
Yeah, and there's a few things we need to look at here. We need to look at additional ambulance units and the personnel to staff them. This city is also growing. So in 2020, we had our master plan, At that time, it identified that we had the right number of firefighters in this city, but we had too many stations and we needed to consolidate stations. So we've started doing that. For example, Station 9 and 15 have been consolidated, and we have plans for further consolidation. But there's growth in this city. So there's areas of the city on the periphery that are having new housing starts, light industrial and industrial starts. And we need to plan for that from an emergency services aspect, because we can't service those areas with our existing infrastructure. So that will mean the need for additional fire paramedic stations, firefighters, and paramedics.
How short are we when you think about that? I don't want to make anyone nervous, but when you look at the growth and the ring of growth, what are the areas, neighborhoods maybe that you're thinking we need something there? That's too big of an area without fire hall.
So we've got growth plans in the South Transcone area. There's a lot of growth happening in the northwest quadrant of the city. Just yesterday, we heard more announcements about Centerport. Fabulous thing for the city of Winnipeg, but we also need to plan for that from an emergency services aspect. There's also plans for south of Winnipeg, south of St. Norbert and South Charleswood areas. So growth is good, but we need to plan for these from an emergency services aspect. And that's something that our team is doing now. Probably more than ever, we're tied in closer than ever before with our colleagues at Property Planning and Development. So that's a good thing. These conversations are ongoing.
So given all the things you're talking about, I mean, that stat about the ambulance, responding in because there's not enough ambulances is astonishing. The 85% stat you just talked about. You can understand why firefighters and members often talk about how demanding this has all become. The union has this survey, a third of firefighters responded, and of the respondents at least, fewer than 10% said they'd recommend the Winnipeg Fire Department as a safe place to work. What is needed to turn that around?
So we need to look at some of the social issues that are driving call volumes in Winnipeg right now. And so that's not only a volume issue, but it's also a safety issue for our staff. So, typically in a 24-hour period, we can respond out to about 27 calls in the 24-hour period that are related to overdoses. So those calls...
Say that again, because that is...
27 calls in a 24-hour period.
Overdose calls.
Overdose calls.
Firefighters.
And paramedics,
yeah. And paramedics, yeah. Okay.
So these can be very challenging calls, not only for the patient that's involved, but for the responding personnel. And there's a lot of safety issues that we're dealing with out on the streets of Winnipeg right now, too. So we've had to implement additional safety programs, threat management training for our staff, scenario-based training. This is training that was never done before, never contemplated. We had to introduce that. And jurisdictions from across Canada have now inquired about that training, and they're starting to deploy it in other major centers.
Was it developed here then?
It was developed here, born out of some surveys that we did with the staff and a safety audit that we had conducted. And we worked with a Winnipeg company, Setcan, to develop the program here for Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service.
To the question about the incoming chief then, what would you say to this person about addressing the needs of the department and the people in it, the members, starting day one?
So it's very important to remain accessible to the folks that work here. This is an excellent team of professionals at Fire Paramedic Service. There can be a tendency to get tied up in meetings and the daily work, but it's very important to remain available to hear directly from the people. So that's something that I've always tried to do, and I would encourage whoever is going to follow in after me here to do the same, because listening and hearing from your people, the people that are on the ground every day serving Winnipeggers, is very important.
What are you going to miss the most?
The people. So not just the team at headquarters, but the folks that are working out on the street every day serving Winnipeggers. Just last night I had the opportunity to visit with a couple of our staff members at one of the stations, and it's just a great experience to hear from them, and I would really encourage the next chief to do the same, but I'm going to miss that. That's the big one.
Anything else you'd like to say to the community before you head into retirement that you think is important? Because 33 years being at the helm is a long time. So much has changed. I just want to make sure I give you the opportunity to leave us with like a parting thought about what's most important if we're going to have a healthy service that responds to the real changes in our city and in our growing communities moving forward.
Yeah, so I think, it's important for people. Emergency services are, they're key to the healthy, vibrant city. So I think, with an election coming, people need to hear that is important from the public. I've had, and our department has had tremendous support from our mayor and council, and I don't see any reason why that's not going to continue. And then the other piece is, if you get an opportunity to interact with one of our staff members out in public, thank them for their service, because you know what? It's tough out there. Our people are feeling it every day. And to receive that kind of positive feedback from the public that you're serving, it really feels good. It's really nice, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your service, Christian Schmidt.
Thank you.
I won't ask you what you're doing in retirement, because I've heard most people hate that question because they're like, I just want to rest right now, or else they're like, I don't know.
I don't have a problem answering that one. I'm going to take time to spend more time with family and friends and enjoy other things in life, because, we've committed a lot of time and energy to serving the city and the department, and so that's where the focus is going to be.
33 years is a long time. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Christian Schmidt is the outgoing fire and paramedic chief. He will retire from his role in July. Time right now is 8:27.
Complicated, you know what you want and I like it. You know that I'm getting signals that you're sending. You want me, no way I can fight it. People talk, but they ain't saying nothing. Your lips ain't moving, but I'm hearing something. So say it again, say it again. Let me hear you say it. I had a dime for every single time your touch told me what you were thinking. The way that you're moving, you know what you're doing. Every part of you is speaking my language. People talk, but they ain't saying nothing. Your lips ain't moving, but I'm hearing something. So say it again, say it again. Let me hear you say it again, say it again, say it again.
Well, Say It Again from Kendra Kay. A little bit of music for you this morning. But what will you be saying on the call-in? That's my less than clever turn to Marjorie Dalhouse. She's here to tell us about the topic. What is your question today on the Radio Noon call-in?
Well, today, Marcy, as you heard yesterday on Up to Speed, a new map has revealed the scope of the city's restrictions on encampments. We heard from some community folks yesterday, but we want you to join the conversation. What do you think? Do you think the city, or wherever you live, because this is not just a Winnipeg issue, do you think that your community is handling the situation well? What more would you like to see? Call, text us, join the conversation coming up on Radio Noon today.
All right. Thanks, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
So that's Radio Noon's call-in. Starts at 12:15. I want to thank the people that worked in the morning show and Information Radio this morning. The associate producers, Stu Smalley, as well as Sophia Peralta-Barone and Michaela Van Kooten. In our news department, Heather Wells, Joni Nicolo, Megan Ketchison, and Darren Bernhardt on our web team. Our live team in studio and in the control room, we have Abby Adeyemi, we have Sarah Sanders, and we have Darren Marash. Thank you, guys. Also to our producers, Robin Summerfield on the show's producing, and the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba, who is Leif Larson. Thanks, everybody, for your work. Your CBC News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. Sunny, 17 degrees. It's going to be another hot one. We're headed to 29 this afternoon. Prayers are starting now across the city as Muslims mark Eid al-Adha today. But the Manitoba Islamic Association says the rising cost of lamb may change how some Muslims celebrate. On the Festival of Sacrifice, it is traditional for a lamb to be slaughtered and the meat shared with family, friends, and those in need. Norris Zeid at the Manitoba Islamic Association says the cost of lamb has skyrocketed in the last few years. He's heard of some families buying a small lamb for as much as $600.
It's starting to become a concern for some families, and I think some families are going to be taking some shortcuts and maybe not going after a whole lamb, maybe just getting some pieces and maybe getting lamb like donated through a relief agency where it's cheaper somewhere else, so they can do a whole lamb for somebody. Because people want to do a whole lamb, but right now sometimes it's just too costly.
Federal data shows the price of live lamb has jumped as much as 30% between 2024 and 2025. Well, they have been debating all night and now into the morning at the Manitoba Legislature. Some tired claps there. They're all sitting in the chamber debating the government's budget implementation bill. The PCs say they are pushing the NDP to strengthen that bill with better affordability measures. Independent MLA Mark Wasiliu says the current plan to cut the PST on junk food and ready-made meals won't help.
People are hurting, and obviously the Premier can read a headline. His signature policy is to cut the PST on junk food. Because, as we know, we already don't pay PST on healthy food.
The Tories want a major income tax cut instead. Premier Wab Kinew is pushing for this bill to pass soon so the PST cut happens by July 1st. And so the debating goes on, now approaching the 17th hour. Winnipeg's mayor says despite more 7-Eleven convenience stores closing in this city, he is confident more will open. Last year, 10 7-Elevens across the city closed out of concerns of crime and employee safety. In the past week, 2 more stores have shut down. Mayor Scott Gillingham says it's not just a Winnipeg issue.
7-Eleven is going to a different model as well. And 7-Eleven, if you take a look at what's happening across North America, they've closed hundreds of stores across North America. So this is not just a Winnipeg thing. There have been 7-Eleven store closures across North America.
At his State of the City address in March, Mayor Gillingham used a Slurpee as a prop, saying 7-Eleven could be expanding in Winnipeg. He says now, when he last spoke to company officials, they told him new stores would be opening. Flavored vape products may soon be harder to buy. The province is introducing a law to tighten access. Flavored vape products would only be sold at age-restricted specialty stores. The measure aims to make it harder for young people to find flavored vape. But Julia Muka at the Manitoba Lung Association says the products will still be too easy to find.
The bill changes where flavored products are sold. It doesn't significantly reduce access to the flavored products themselves. And research consistently shows that flavors are one of the biggest drivers to youth vaping. So we need to make some meaningful changes.
Muka says while youth are already banned from buying vape products, they're still finding ways to get them. Some youth, she says, are buying from people they know, while others buy online. Manitobans may soon have a better understanding of the smoke that fills our skies every summer. A state-of-the-art facility called the Air Safe Lab is set to open later this year at the University of Manitoba. Professor Andrew Haleko is one of the project's co-leads. He says the lab will be able to provide complex, real-time measures to help people make decisions about whether to wear a mask or take part in outdoor recreation. He says it will also make Manitoba a leader when it comes to understanding air pollution.
This is being ahead of the curve. This is building something that other people will want to copy, as opposed to us, being the follower. So it will make us a leader. It will make us a center of excellence. And I think it's generating real excitement.
Haleko says the lab will be able to simulate different types of fire and evaluate the effects of approximately 30 different constituents of smoke. You can find more on those stories. All you have to do is head to our website throughout the day, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells with our morning news run, and she's here, of course, still throughout the morning and on the day on 89.3 FM. Let's find out what's happening one last time in traffic before we close the show. Here's Sierra back.
It's been a pretty quiet morning on the commuter line, Marcy. No major situations that we heard about after that fire was put under control and roads opened. But we did get a call from George at the top of the hour, just past the westbound Pembina overpass on Abino-Jimikana. Cement was kind of coming up from the roads and was kind of creating a little bit of a situation there where cement pieces were kind of all over the roads. There was one spot there just past the Pembina overpass there heading westbound on Abino-Jimikana, but also another spot about a kilometer later. So keep an eye out. I heard that City of Winnipeg crews were on the scene assessing it, but keep an eye out for that here as the morning commute continues.
All right, let's get into a last look at weather with Abby.
Yeah, down south, we're already seeing temperatures close to 17 degrees across the region. Sunny skies, heat warning still in place for Brandon and the Morden area. We see highs reaching 32, 33 for those regions. Well, for Winnipeg, we only get to 29 today with lots of sunshine. Right now, it's 17 degrees.
All right, thank you, Abby. Take care, everyone. Enjoy that sunshine. We waited long enough for it. And also, of course, be careful in it. Drink the water, put on the hat, all that good stuff. And don't forget the sunscreen. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're back again tomorrow with a special edition of Information Radio. We are going to be live in Niverville. Really excited to learn about one of the fastest growing communities in the country. And also what growing pains and progress mean to the people on the ground. Plus some super cute kids. You don't want to miss it. That's tomorrow, live from Niverville.